Good afternoon and good evening to the rest of you. We are back. It is bright and early on a Monday morning here in Los Angeles, and I am your host, Q, coming to you live from my mother's basement. And we have a jam-packed episode today. Just a quick little reminder, and we'll bring this up throughout the week. We will be off Thursday and Friday as Bitcoin Magazine is going to be all bunkered up, figuring out what the next phase looks like after we are now done and wrapped. Finally can say Bitcoin 22 is in our rearview mirrors, but Bitcoin 23 is on the horizon. If you didn't get a chance to get your pre-sale tickets yet, but you want to, shoot us a DM. We have a limited supply left that we are still going to be selling, but the next ticket increase is going to be imminent, and that will also reintroduce our industry passes as well. So be on the lookout for those tickets. But in the meantime, for today's episode, we have two guests. We'll first be joined by Taha of Amwal Networks, and then we're going to be checking in with Dr. Jeff Ross and Greg Foss on some market updates as well. But we'll kick things off with Adam. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good, Q. How are you? You put me before Dr. Jeff Ross. That's a tough spot for me.
We hope you live up to the hype, man. It was a pleasure getting to meet you, even for a brief moment at the conference. Let's start there. What was sort of your experience like being in Miami?
It was my first time in Miami and my first time at the Bitcoin conference. I've heard so much about it, but I never really covered it from the perspective of a press perspective. And that was fascinating because I got to talk to the Bitcoin celebrities like Dr. Jeff Ross, Max Kaiser, and a lot of other people. And it gave me a different view, really. There's the, I don't want to call it the social media view or perspective, and there's also the industry, which is so fascinating. And now I understand why Bitcoin Magazine focuses on that industry and highlighting for startups, specifically for startups, highlighting their products and showcasing their products. And it was fascinating. The stuff I learned there, I can't learn them anywhere else online or even any meetings or whatever. You have to be there at the Bitcoin conference. If you haven't been to 22, be there at 23. You will gain so much insight. I learned so much about, for example, the upcoming business and IPOs and everything that comes with mining. And also learned a lot about Lightning Network, the Lightning Network and the products that are going on right now and everything. It's just amazing, really. So
love that. I did not tell Adam to tell you guys to attend Bitcoin 23. So that is just pure authentic marketing from him. But I do want to also just touch on something else, that if you weren't able to attend Bitcoin 22, you guys just completely lost me. I have no video. It's fine. I'm going to keep talking while I figure this out.
I'll brighten the screen up.
But if you were not able to attend Bitcoin 22, all of the footage is available. Nope, wrong camera. All of the footage is available.
We do it live here.
We are literally live, and this, all right, this should work. All of the footage is available on our YouTube channel, Bitcoin 22. Adam, I'm going to punt a question over to you, but talk to us a little bit about how you started Amwal Networks, but before that, how you first came to discover or learn about Bitcoin.
So Amwal Network, Amwal means money in Arabic. The body of knowledge of Bitcoin in general, Bitcoin code, Bitcoin as for investment, Bitcoin technology, everything Bitcoin. The protocol itself, everything is mainly in English, and that is, it's good and bad when it comes to reaching the masses in the world. You know, there are so many people who want to learn about Bitcoin, who want to experience Bitcoin, want to use Bitcoin, and so on. But as you know, in English itself, there's a steep learning curve. So imagine from the perspective of a Russian speaker, Arabic speaker, any African language speaker, and all these languages. There are so hundreds of languages, thousands of languages around the world. So I took it on myself. I worked in the past. So my background: I was born in Iraq, and I grew up in the United States, in California mainly. So shout out to San Diego, and I worked in the finance sector, and then I mainly worked also in this department. That's why I'm in DC right now. And when COVID hit, I was in Bitcoin. I learned about it in 2013, 2014, dabbled a little bit. And if you remember, for those who remember, the OGs remember the faucets. And that's, I can't, some people don't believe me when I tell them about faucets, with the whole thing with Bitcoin faucets. So I experimented with that a little bit. There was Bit Instance or whatever you called it at the time. And then I sold most of it, as have so many people. And I learned my lesson when, after 2017 and 2018. And Amwal Network is trying to make that experience, the Bitcoin experience, reach the Arabic speaking world. There are over 300, I would say 350 million people, as many as there are citizens in the United States, US population. There are 350 million Arabic speakers around the world, and I wanted to be part. I'm not the only one, but we wanted to be we wanted to spearhead, for example, the Lightning Network. We are, so as far as I know, and my team knows, we're the only Arabic channel that is talking about Lightning Network. We're building our nodes and doing so many things in that space. So that's how I came out. That's how I started the whole channel. And we were lucky. We were so fortunate in the beginning to get accepted, for an interview request with Dr. Saifeddin Ammous. And then Michael Saylor said yes. We're the only Arabic channel that Mr. Saylor said yes to. And that was a huge privilege that really launched us. And since then, we spoke with Natalie from Bitcoin Magazine. We spoke with so many amazing people. And slowly, gaining that traction and gaining some, our focus is really on educating people. And that's what we're doing. We're also doing some Bitcoin Lightning Network nodes and developing apps and doing as much as we could to spread the word.
Where have you found a majority of your audience wanting to learn about Bitcoin? Is it just the general what Bitcoin is? Is it more related to like current events news, or is it more related to like the business development side of it? Where do you spend the majority of your time in the Bitcoin space?
That's a great question. So I want to remind everyone, including the two of us, that we all have said no before we said yes to Bitcoin. All of us. We started with that. And I think David Weiss has said that before. We all said no before we said yes. And the first no is followed by, how do I make money off of this? So the most people, understandably, our viewers, listeners, and so on, are mostly interested in the investment and speculative side of it. And a few are getting into the tech of it, understanding how the protocol works, understanding its role in the future. But for now, most people are invested and interested in making money off of it quickly, because there are so many stories about people becoming millionaires and billionaires of a Bitcoin. And all these stories are missing the time element. People said, so-and-so became a billionaire from Bitcoin, or a millionaire, or so-and-so made, 100 million off of Bitcoin. But rarely do we hear how much time it took for them to become millionaires off of Bitcoin. People think if you got in 2013, then you became a millionaire instantly. But in fact, it took about 5-6 years to become a millionaire from like $1,000 entered in 2013. So most of our segment of viewers and listeners to our program are mostly interested in investing and following the price action, understandably. And there's a learning curve. We said no at first, and then we were interested in making money. And afterwards, I believe the third step, which is crucial, is understanding how it works. And that is my passion, is understanding and relaying. I hate to use the word teaching, because I'm also a student, and I learn as much as possible. So I'm relaying that information in Arabic, English as well, but mostly in Arabic. And that's mainly what's going on.
Have you found there are maybe certain regions that are more inclined to learn about Bitcoin? I want to broaden the scope, because the Arabic language is spoken by so much of the world. Are there specific countries or regions that you're finding are more receptive to Bitcoin right now?
Yes. So we have Bahrain, we have UAE, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. Oh my God, so many influencers and analysts and people interested in Kuwait, because I believe there were some subsidies for mining, believe it or not, early on, like as of 6 years ago. And that's why it took off over there. And in general, and there's also, especially in North Africa as well, Morocco and Algeria, I've never seen such an amazing audience over there in that region, North Africa. We have Algeria and Morocco heavily invested in Bitcoin tech and in Bitcoin as a currency of exchange. There are so many reasons for that. First of all, we have the usual macro trends like inflation and unemployment and all, and so on and so forth. But we also have there's a lot of tightening and governmental regulations on Bitcoin over there, and Bitcoin is already scarce, so making it even more scarce tends to backfire on the regulators. And we've seen that in China, we've seen that elsewhere, we've seen that, and that's, in my opinion, that's what's happening in Morocco and Algeria. There's this regulation that makes a drive towards it. Kind of, whatever is forbidden, there is a market for it. And when when Bitcoin is forbidden, Bitcoin has that amazing use, not just investment, but also tech and so many other things. And people along the way, with time, will find out the value of Bitcoin, not just scarcity, but also the technology, beating inflation, and so many other things. I mean, it's a rabbit hole. We always talk about the rabbit hole. Like Michael Saylor could talk about it for hours and hours. It's fascinating, but it's the more you educate yourself on it, the more ready you are for using it. And people in the region, the Gulf region, and also in North Africa, are, as they're holding it, some of them are unintentionally learning more about it. So that's the good thing. That's the great thing about it. Bitcoin is one of those things that takes time. You'll learn, even if you don't want to learn. When you say no in the beginning, it takes some. With time, you will learn. You will learn that it's tough to beat the market. It's tough to time the market. It's tough to be a person in a rush to make a quick buck. It's tough to make monthly income without educating yourself first. It takes time, and you accumulate and you DCA. Although it's boring, but that's what I'm trying to make people understand. That's really the goal of it.
And Adam, I'm curious because you brought up earlier how like a lot of your conversations right now are around the Lightning Network. Mm-hmm. How much of the conversation just in the broader region has shifted from Bitcoin as a savings mechanism and a store of value to a medium of exchange, or we can maybe buy certain goods or services with Bitcoin? Has that conversation started to transpire out there, or is it still more focused on store of value?
I would like to say yes, but I'll be honest, it's a no. It's still Bitcoin is for savings mainly. Now, here's the thing. Let me just set the stage first. First of all, inflation. We talk about inflation in the United States, how it's affecting the dollar, how it's affecting prices, how everything's going up, 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 and we feel the pain here. But believe me, people overseas feel it even twofold, threefold sometimes. Because our economy is since 1971, since decoupling from the gold standard, we relied on oil and political power and military power and other things, and military production became the engine of this economy. But in the Middle East and in other parts of the world, it's their currencies are not pegged to these things. Their currencies are pegged to the dollar. And the dollar, as I mentioned, is pegged to these other powers within the United States. So their currencies fluctuate and are volatile based on what the United States does or doesn't do. Whoever comes into power, whatever the interest rates on the 2-year, 10-year, and 30-year, that these things they don't affect me on a day-to-day basis. But in Lebanon, and in Iraq and in Libya and Egypt, people get affected deeply because their savings are in dollars. There are some families and some people who have gold, but not a lot of gold. Gold is very centralized, just like it is here. So their savings are in dollars. In Lebanon, for example, in Iraq, if I know some people, if they want to buy something, they buy it with dollars, US dollars. So that's one thing. So telling them about Bitcoin as an alternative to gold, like I mentioned earlier, takes time and a learning curve. Then afterwards, to convince them that it could be a mode of everyday expenses by trading, transacting, all of that stuff. We need to explain the something I learned at Bitcoin 2022. It's which is that the Lightning Network allows you to trade in your local currency, but send it over the Lightning Network. It gets converted. Like if I send you $1 or a dinar or a dirham or a real, for example, in Saudi Arabia, using an app, Strike or whatever apps, we're also working on our own app, that currency will get converted automatically to Bitcoin and get transferred to the recipient. And then just a nanosecond or instantly before it arrives, it will be switched back to whatever currency the receiver is receiving or deciding. And so with this method, Bitcoin becomes really the foundation, the technological foundation that Michael Saylor keeps talking about, which is a foundation that feeds. It's like it's the blood of the monetary system, the future one, to send value over the Lightning Network for people who don't understand it, even for people who don't care about Bitcoin. They're only using it to send money over the network. And that's what I'm trying to hone in on in my show and tell people about. And we're starting, we're getting there slowly to convince people that it's a mode of transferring value, transacting, everyday transacting, even if you're scared of Bitcoin, even if you're scared of volatility. The main, and I'm sorry, I'm talking too much, but a lot of people say, what if I buy it now and buy something with it and then the value goes up or down? What am I going to do? Well, on the Lightning Network, you don't have to care about that. On the Lightning Network, if you choose as the sender or the receiver, if you pick to use the local currency, you're only converting on the Lightning Network, then there is no fear of volatility because it's instant. That's the beauty of the Lightning Network. And one last point I will say is all of this Bitcoin is doing without a single marketing team. Now, there are some competitors, and the C word, crypto, I don't know what to say. So there's a lot of, altcoins out there, XRP and everything, who claim to solve that problem, but these altcoins use tons and tons and tons of marketing teams and marketing campaigns to convince people of that, while Bitcoin doesn't have any marketing teams. And it's already relaying that information to the world. And there's value in that, I believe. There's massive value.
There's a lot to unpack there. I would highly recommend, if you have not gotten a chance in English, unfortunately, we don't have it in Arabic, but maybe Adam, you can help us to get that over to Arabic. But Jack Mallers' announcement at Bitcoin 22 explains what Adam is explaining here about using the Lightning payment rail as a way to send dollars to dollars from a customer to a merchant. And not only are you able to just interact much more quickly in money transferring as a result, but you also don't have to pay these middlemen like the banks, like your bank or the merchant's bank or the credit card processing fees. So all of that stuff goes away by using the Lightning Network. But I want to, if you don't mind, playing this like little back and forth sort of definitely more speculative but thought experiment, because a lot of the countries that you've listed and a lot of the countries that I think your show really speaks to are these oil wealthy nations that have not necessarily benefited from the US money printing, however, have become allies to a degree based on the resources that their countries have. We see this sort of push and pull. Just over 2 years ago, oil was trading at a negative value, and today it's trading at record highs. We see a conversation around our energy usage on a global scale and a conversation around Bitcoin's energy usage as well. I'm curious about the conversations that you're having in regards to where does Bitcoin fit into the equation of the oil mining in particular, but just oil in general.
That's a great question. So oil is a real asset. It's a real commodity. US value, the dollar value, is a paper value. Now, these countries, the oil producing countries, OPEC and OPEC Plus and other producing countries, they're slowly, they're understanding that oil, real commodity with real value and real use, it's real. It's real stuff. It's a real stuff. and it's being exchanged for paper value, and that's the US dollar. Now, sooner or later, Russia has discovered that and started implementing a method of saying, you know, I have real oil, I have real value, I have real stuff on my hand. Why should I take your paper in exchange for it? Your paper, you control it, you reach into my account and freeze it and seize it in some cases. Why should I give that to you? Now, the Gulf countries also know that. I'm definite, they also know that. They are some of the smartest people in charge over there. And they know that their stuff is real. They watch everything that's going on and they understand that. However, decoupling could have diplomatic and political problems. So the best way to use that power, the oil producing power, is mining, as you mentioned. Mining, so oil has this demand problem, and demand and production. You can't overproduce because you have to forecast demand. The first lesson I learned, MBA, I have my MBA from Penn State, and one of the, all the demand values and equilibrium and all these things, we learned that oil has this major problem because to extract oil and get oil, you need to forecast and you need to understand, have your finger on political and macro trends and so many other things. Mining solves that. So this fluctuation in demand and this change in demand, like we saw with COVID, destroyed demand. We saw oil, we saw oil go below zero. You were getting paid to take oil. That was crazy. That's insane. And that's because we don't understand the demand value of this. So mining as a process, a mining process that, all these miners produce so much and they need so much energy, oil can come in and solve that problem for its demand problem. It could give these miners the energy they need, and miners have the power, no pun intended, to turn off or reduce their mining power. If their cities or their countries are under stress of energy use, they could turn it off or turn it down or reduce it. But as a one line, as a streamlined demand, they could give it to mining. So if they start mining, like we saw in several cities in the United States, like I believe in Tennessee and other places, Austin as well, Texas mainly, there's a lot of, because it's a trickle up economy, because you could start at the little towns, the little zip codes, you could start mining and producing a trickle up wealth using mining. That could be done in the Middle East. It's not just the Gulf countries. There's also Libya. There's also Iraq and other places. And it's a commodity-rich region, and mining is their best way to create wealth from way below all the way upwards to feed the economy, and also to solve that demand problem. That we always have to forecast demand. With mining, you don't need to forecast demand because whatever excess you have could be used for generating Bitcoin and wealth. So that's what I'm trying to relay, and I've been communicating with a few figures in the Middle East, trying to lobby them to start implementing at least a few steps towards that goal. But again, it's a process of convincing, especially with so much money and so much power and so much on the line. It takes time, but we're getting there. That's what I want to say. That we're getting there.
So I want to really get to the bottom of this because, like, I don't necessarily agree with this idea that these oil-rich companies who benefit from us on the global scale being reliant on oil as our main source of energy are going to help usher in this new form of technology that essentially more clearly defines the value of your energy. Like, where or how do we go from convincing the citizens who want to use it to the powers that be who are benefiting from allowing oil to essentially continue to be at the focal point of all sources of energy? Like, we're seeing the shift slowly happen here in America. You have ConocoPhillips and ExxonMobil now introducing oil flaring to mine Bitcoin while they're mining natural gas. Are those conversations that you're hearing or seeing out in the Middle East?
So the Middle East sees and hears the virtue signaling from a lot of U.S. institutions and politicians about energy use and about oil use and everything. We've seen even the president talk about introducing renewable energy in the U.S. military, and there's a push for EVs and other things. But again, that's, I believe, is virtue signaling, because mainly two reasons. So if we look at the number of cars in the world, gas consuming cars, I believe there's 1.5 billion, 1.5 billion would it be cars. While EVs in the world, I think there's 45 million. The latest estimate I've seen is about 45 million electric vehicles around the world. Even electric vehicles use gas to turn energy into electric power. So there's a lot of virtue signaling, but consumption is still very high, and it takes decades and decades to switch and transition from one energy source to another, or from one energy use to another. But they understand, even if it takes decades, these countries, these oil-producing countries, understand that even if it takes decades, it's still a possibility, especially if nuclear power enters the equation. Now, the same people who are all for ESG and all for environmental, the same people who protest today's oil consumption are the same people who protested the 3 islands, I believe, and Chernobyl and other. They're the same ones. So we couldn't do nuclear energy production here, and we couldn't do now a lot of the gas consumption, oil consumption methods. So what are we supposed to do? Coal? We go back to coal? That's impossible. We have to stay on gas and oil for the foreseeable future. Now, the oil power from the oil producing companies and governments in the Middle East, yes, you are right. Convincing the average person, the average citizen, to use Bitcoin is a difficult thing on its own. But convincing governments, it's not as far-fetched as you might think. So the governments over there rely on a lot of young minds. There's a lot of young people in the Gulf governments. Believe me, there are so many young people, and they're very in tune with tech, and they're in tune with the ramifications of that ESG virtue signaling, and so many other things that are going on in Europe and the Middle East. They see what's going on with Russia. They see the reliance of Germany, for example, on Russian gas, and the push to find nuclear sources and all that stuff. So the fear is not of electric power. The fear is from, of course, nuclear. And they see all of that. So they already do understand that Bitcoin could solve that problem, and especially mining. We've seen some reports of, for example, Aramco, the biggest company in the world, the Saudi Aramco, talking about not Bitcoin, mining, specifically mining. So there are hints. And in Arabic, we say there is no smoke without fire, and these hints and these signals mean there are some things. There are things that are going on in boardrooms. There are at least talks and negotiations and discussions on that matter, on using mining to consume whatever excess production we have.
Right, but is that not just virtue signaling? To just have a conversation about Bitcoin mining and say we're thinking about it, is that not just a virtue signal to those of us who are passionate about this technology? Meanwhile, you have this cartel that dictates the price of oil around the world, who has nothing to benefit or gain from adoption of Bitcoin, and only gains from us continuing to use their oil and gas. So again, I present the question of what actual benefit do these governments have in adopting Bitcoin if their real value add to society is oil, and that is how they have been granted this place on the world stage?
The only benefit they would have really is protection from the US dollars, the DXY, the US dollar's loss of its value and purchasing power. And we've seen Japan, for example, is divesting. They sold, what, according to Bloomberg, about 60 billion. So the only benefit they may have is protection from the dollar's demise. Another thing, the only other thing I could think of is leading, because you don't want to be the last to the punch bowl. You want to be the first. You want to be in the first batch of adopters. That's the only benefit I could think of. You're right. There is no benefit for them now to abandon that. Everything I'm talking about is not going to happen in months. It's going to take years, maybe decades down the road. Same thing with every transition from one power source to another. Everything we've seen when cars were in the late 1800s, when cars were talked about, people fought tooth and nail for horses. So it takes time. It must be understood that these governments will never abandon the dollar easily. The US, there's no way, because their power also, by extension, is based on US power, of course. And they price oil. They make we talk about petrodollar, and petrodollars are propped up by oil. So it's a system that supports itself. But it takes time. And then the only thing I could think of is the weakness of the US dollar, and also being first. You don't want to be last. You don't want to be, because we saw people started fighting over Bitcoin as 8 years ago, and companies started fighting over Bitcoin in 2020 until now. And next, it will be governments that fight over Bitcoin. And we will see that in the next few years. And like, first, I understand your question, and I understand the frustration of these countries and companies feeding the power of the dollar. There is no benefit for them in adopting Bitcoin, especially that Bitcoin is not owned by someone and not owned by something or an entity. The only benefit is the weakness, avoiding the weakness of the US dollar, and also being first in line to this power. That's the only power they might want to get to.
We will see.
Yeah, I hope so.
I want to get a sense more of what's going on, or the conversations you're having with actual citizens of these different parts of the Middle East. What are some of the priorities or conversations that you're having with people where they're saying, this is a reason why I turned to Bitcoin?
So the reasons they turn, before I talk about that, there's a trend that I've noticed in several countries, especially in the Gulf. So the young people are very, very techy. They're tech savvy. They like learning new technology and investing in new technologies in US stocks and Bitcoin and other things, and a lot of altcoins. However, the money holders and real money in the Gulf countries is in the hands of, I hate to say this, but people of older age, just like here in America. And there's skepticism with that older generation of investing in Bitcoin or anything crypto. Just like Warren Buffett is the Warren Buffett way of thought. It's not real, has no use, has no utility. However, when money starts transitioning, changing hands inevitably to that younger generation, they cannot wait to sink their teeth into Bitcoin and other cryptos. That's just a fact. Because they understand it. It's not just speculation. It's not for investment for, and day trading and all that stuff. No, it's actual investment in technology, building apps, building technology, building companies and startups based on that technology and Lightning Network specifically. But it takes time. Do older generations over there believe in Bitcoin? Not at all. They all think just like Warren Buffett, and that's understandable. My mom thinks the same way. She believes it's not real, but that's how it is. That's just how it is. And when we're older, I don't know, Q, you look like you're 65. I don't know. I'm just kidding. When we when we are older, in a few decades, we will look at a new technology that the new generation may or may not have, and we will look at it with some skepticism. And that's,
I'll simplify that for you. Our generation was on MySpace and Facebook, and right now, if you bring up either of those to any of these high school kids, they'll film a TikTok of you actually talking about ancient technology. So technology changes very quickly. I don't doubt that. I had the high thought the other day of, look, either time travel just never is going to happen, because otherwise I would have gone back to 2010 and been like, you'll buy Bitcoin to myself, or Bitcoin is not actually the end all be all that we think it is. But conversation for another time.
The main, sorry if I cut you. Sorry to cut you off. I have one thing to add to the thing is the main problem I've been seeing by talking to people in the Middle East, and I plan a few trips to a few countries over there very soon. The main problem I have is most of them just follow the price action in USD. And I always tell them, forget about the price action. You're in it for the long haul. Forget about, drop from 39 to 38. Who cares? Just hold on and wait for it. Because we look at Bitcoin on a yearly basis. It's the best performing asset in the last 5 and also the 10 years. It beat everything else. So watch that and just treat it like a savings account. Stop looking at your phone every 5 minutes. Stop looking at your phone every day. And another thing is U.S. companies. Hey, U.S. companies, what are you doing? Like, the Middle East is such a great and fertile market for crypto right now, and mainly Bitcoin. We have Binance, for example, taking over the market over there. And I'm sorry to say this, I know this is live, but they're taking over the market. They're making great relationships, and they're building business partnerships. And what are US companies doing? Nothing. Most of them. Look at Coinbase and look at Kraken. Just recently got a license in Abu Dhabi, which is great. And I think Kraken's mind is in the right place. And I wish that more American companies would do the same, because it's such an amazing market, very overlooked, and has high liquidity. That market over there, especially the younger generation, it's over 50% of people, the population of their demographics, are between the ages of 15 and 39, I believe, 29, 39. And Binance is just going in and taking over this market, and I wish we would be engaged more.
First, I just want to shout out, I know that we have a lot of people watching on YouTube. The next carrot and drop where we will give away free sats will be when we get up to 100 likes. So smash that like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe as well. But we will be giving out more free sats, hopefully very soon for you guys. Adam, I want to maybe dissect something there, because, like, look, I'm the son of Iranian immigrants. I know how it goes where Middle East, all of a sudden there's like this stigma, especially stateside. How much of that stigma do you think is being applied to this idea of developing out business ventures in that region of the world?
Huge. I mean, oh man. So in Iran, I know there are many people who either mine or use Bitcoin and invest in Bitcoin. I know that. And it's a solace for many people. It's a rope for many people to buy and do services online and everything. But the skepticism of US companies in doing any business over there, some of it is well-founded, and some of it is, where the environment in the United States is a product of over a decade post 9/11 culture and so many other things, and many stigmas over there and things. And there's also the risk factor. There's a risk of doing business in a region that 2003 war in Iraq, and then we had the Arab Spring, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, and several other countries. So there's that risk factor, and then the law. You cannot have good business relationships. So we're not talking about building a whole, Target or Walmart over there. We're talking about, there are very, very amazing startups over there that are ready to showcase their, not through Amwal Network, no, like they could showcase their products to many US companies who are interested in these things, because it's true that it's stigmatized. There's a lot of problems. You cannot do business in Iran. You cannot do business, for example, in Iraq as well. So there's no infrastructure for business, but that's what Bitcoin solves. You could, we saw what, I forgot her name, the Afghan entrepreneur, Mahbub, her last name is Mahbub. Fascinating story. I heard to Natalie Brunel's episode on her. She's fascinating. She started in 2013, 2014, paying her employees in Bitcoin. You can do that. Michael Saylor and Saifuddin Ammous also talked about it, how you could pay your, it's a great economy where you could pay in Bitcoin. So businesses who want to start or venture into the Middle East, they could pay in Bitcoin. Many people would take it. Many people take it. And that's one way of starting a business or building a business or investing in a startup over there, is pay them in Bitcoin. And it worked. It worked with the Miss Mahbub, and it worked with a lot of other ventures. As for the stigma, it exists. Some of it is well-founded, as I mentioned. There's a lot of risk, but there's a way out, and there's a way to do business. It's through Bitcoin. Venture into Bitcoin, pay in Bitcoin. It's a great economy.
I'm curious also, though, if you think that there could be an opportunity for those up and coming bright minds in this region to just sort of take the mantle away from the West and say, you know what, I understand this technology is important. I want to see this technology benefit. Let's build it out for our use cases. Culturally speaking, the way like my family in Iran interacts with money is very different than the way my family here interacts with money. Like every Middle Easterner who grew up in America or moved to the West always remembers those times where you would go back home and you'd literally take a suitcase just full of everything here because they don't have those type of resources. What if we could essentially recreate that in the inverse and give the playbook to these kids to in turn build out the resources that they're going to take to the rest of the world? Like, is that not something that's being done? Like, what does Bitcoin technology look like in that part of the world that maybe is different from what we have in the West?
So I'm a realist, and ideally, what you said would happen is build a great product. There's no need for the United States or Europe. Nobody appointed the United States or Europe as, the overseers of new tech. Nobody. It's just ideally that's what would happen is make businesses and startups that grow over there and have a great product to flourish and succeed. The problem, however, is due to so many infrastructural and organizational and also capital reasons, the US money, I'm talking companies and businesses, have the capital to grow and nurture businesses. What do I mean by that? Mark Zuckerberg was not the first to think of Facebook. He was not the first. Believe me when I say the odds of someone else having a better idea, a better product of a different version of Facebook, I'm sure existed in Africa and India and other places in the world. But it's Mark's connections, the launchpad, Harvard, and so much money and so many investors and proximity to and moving to Silicon Valley. You see, it's that nurturing, what do we call it, incubating of a startup that makes it a reality. Ideally, we wouldn't need that. That's what we need, and that's what I'm talking about. Now, money-wise and capital, there is a lot of money and capital in the Middle East, of course, to nurture and build and accelerate these businesses. However, it's a worldwide system. We need Chinese investors, we need US investors, European investors in some cases. And when I say US companies going over there, it's not to help pull up startups and make them what they are. No, it's maybe you will find an Iranian developer or an Iraqi developer or a Libyan developer has a great idea, and that US business would benefit in investing in their ideas. And it would stay completely Iranian or Iraqi or Libyan. It doesn't need to be Americanized at all. Not at all. There are so many, like, for example, Amwal Network, we are not looking for anything. We're not looking for a flag. We're not Americanizing. We're not Arabizing. We're not Chinese-ifying or anything. We are, just like Bitcoin, a global reaching company. That's what we hope to be. And when I said US companies, that's maybe it was, I needed to phrase that better. I just meant capital and having a good launch pad for businesses and ideas.
And look, if you ask the Winklevi twins who invented Facebook, I think you're going to get a very different answer than the one you gave us.
Right?
But,
Don't you think Mark's hate to Bitcoin is because of the Winklevi brothers, getting Bitcoin? We don't want to speculate, but it's interesting.
Oh, you mean like the fact that they use the payout from Facebook to go buy Bitcoin?
And maybe that's why he hates Bitcoin. I mean, he refused to get into Bitcoin to this day, I think. I'm just spreading conspiracy.
Does Zuckerberg really?
I mean, he tried to create Libra, right? Libra and Diem.
Yeah, I think he has two sheep named Bitcoin and Maxi, though, as their names. I'll look into it real quick.
I mean, look, I don't think Mark Zuckerberg does not have any Bitcoin, especially because Chamath Palihapitiya was in charge of growth at Facebook in like 2012 through 2014. And that was a period where he was heavily buying Bitcoin as well. So I'm hard pressed to believe that, like, in the tech capital of the world with one of the most iconic tech companies, that he doesn't own some sort of Bitcoin or have some exposure. But to your point earlier, like, yeah, he absolutely explored shitcoinery, like during the ICO craze and pandemic, if you will. I think Michael Saylor said it best on Lex Friedman's show, where you have what is arguably the best technology ever created by man, and to then take away any human creativity, time, and energy from further developing out and building off of this technology to then instead go and create competitors that are essentially just copying the base code and making it worse as a result. Like, that is a far greater, I think, issue with our current industry than anything beyond what big tech could do or influence have, in my opinion.
I agree.
But I'm
They're
curious
like
then.
stocks. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious, what conversations or what place does the broader crypto market have in the Middle East, or shitcoins in general?
So shitcoins like XRP and others go into
Anything that's not Bitcoin is a shitcoin.
that's correct. Is there you
Everyone
go. So
sees the hat. Shitcoin minimalist.
So it's these shitcoins and many companies and many investors have marketing teams, and they're ready to spend millions. We've seen what happened with, I forgot his name, Justin Sun and TRX, Tron, and that whole saga. They spent tens and maybe hundreds of millions of dollars on many marketing campaigns for their shitcoins. We've seen a lot of Binance projects. Binance didn't sponsor them necessarily, but a lot of these shitcoins grow on the BSC, Binance Smart Chain, and they have marketing teams behind them to market and target segments. One of those segments that they target is the Middle East. They target, of course, Asia, some parts of Europe, the United States, Latin America, but a lot of targeting in the Middle East. And most people around the world really look for the next Bitcoin, which is it's never gonna happen. It's never there is no next Bitcoin. Bitcoin is Bitcoin, and people chase that, and that's what marketers exploit. And if you have, let's say, $1 million and you want to build a shitcoin, okay, $1 million to build a shitcoin, you would use maybe 100,000 or less to build the actual shitcoin, and 800-900 to market it on social media and other places. There are some instances, and it's just, I can't confirm it right now, but you could buy Telegram groups, you could buy thousands of posters and everything on Twitter and also on Telegram to market these. Does Bitcoin have any marketing teams? No, zero. But these shitcoins do that. And what do we say? We say altcoins and other crypto was created to separate you from Bitcoin. And every dollar you put in anything other than Bitcoin is a dollar wasted. Now, yes, you could make money, just like a casino. Like, you could buy $1,000 worth or $10,000 worth in Avalanche or Solana or Ethereum, which are good coins when it comes to price action, but you cannot invest in it for the long haul. You can't. Solana crashed, not the price, but the network was down for about 7 hours yesterday. And that's what, the 100th time in a month. And so you could make money. It's true. You could put $1,000, get 1,500, make 50% profit, day trade, swing trade, scalp trade, whatever you call it. But you cannot build a future from it. And there's so much headache, and there's so much risk and so much time consumed to make some profit in these other coins. With Bitcoin, no, you don't. You just need to stack and forget about it, and come back in 5-10 years, or give it to your family, give it to your kids in the future, and this way you beat every other asset, including oil and gold, in 5-10 years. How is that difficult? So that's my take on shitcoins, really, and that's what's going on. It's the marketing behind them that is really selling them. It's not their value at all. It's just the marketing.
How many of your like viewers or audience reaches out to you essentially saying like, oh, but what about this coin? Because you're right, like all they're doing is marketing it. They get some big celebrity that they gift all of the pre-mined coins, and then there you go. All of a sudden, like this coin is now in the zeitgeist. And there's like, I was having this conversation with someone over the weekend where it was like, you can genuinely look at a historic price chart for every single altcoin. And the moment it gets listed on Coinbase, it goes from, oh, we're moving up, and then get listed on Coinbase, sell off, sell off, sell off.
ICP.
Well, here's my favorite one. Then you go look at the Coinbase stock chart. And then you see the fact that its all-time high was the day it IPO'd, and it has never one time since come close to that value, let alone continuing to trend down and to the right. So I'm curious, like how much of your audience is asking for that content versus how many of them are getting like confused by the advertising and marketing around it?
What I saw, and not all of them, of course, but the majority, I would say 70, 80% will take the thread of information from Telegram or Facebook or somewhere else where these marketers operate, and then would come ask me. For example, coin 123. I don't want to say an acronym of any letters, because trust me, there's an acronym for every coin. So, and every shitcoin. So they hear about it, for example, on Telegram, on some weird group, scam group, so-and-so coin. So they would come ask, not just me, but other people also on Twitter, what do you think of this coin? And I'm like, so we're going to hear soon about this shitcoin because its marketing team is on fire. And it's true. That's what happens. Is what do you think of this coin? And I used to ask, do you mean like it's tech? And the response is usually no. It's just, if I put $100, $1,000, $10,000 in it, will it make me good profit, like 20% in a week? I've had these questions for real in the past, and I say, I don't know. I'm not going to research it just because of that, because it takes time to research, especially with shit coins, and then you find it out, and some people just. So that's where a lot of bad faith influencers play a role, because they feed on that instead of relaying information and telling people about tech. They just they take feedback from the questions and use it for their SEO, and say, for example, coin so-and-so, shitcoin so-and-so is going to skyrocket to $1 million, and it's going to be the Ethereum killer or whatever, and then take Bitcoin's market cap. And it's a self-sustaining cycle, I would say. And the best way to battle and combat it is to educate on Bitcoin as much as possible. Only then we could equip people to detect scams, detect bullshit, and understand how to answer their own questions, really.
Adam, I want to give you an opportunity to touch a little bit on just sort of Amwal Network. Did I say that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
But before we do that, like, is there anything maybe recently that someone from your audience has asked you that maybe you'd want to have a conversation about regarding like what Bitcoin is or the technology around it, or maybe just a question that typically pops up that you'd like to address here?
Yes, the Lightning Network. So a lot of people are wondering about the Lightning Network. One of the smart questions that I appreciated from one of our viewers is and I know you guys know the answer to this one, is why not increase the block size? And like the block size was its own, 1 point something megs, and why not increase the size? And to understand this, the answer to this question is just understand the stakeholders of the network. We have the nodes, node operators, and we have also miners and users. And the block wars from 2015 to 2017, that was really the main reason for the block wars, where big money, just like Ethereum and other shitcoins, big money in Bitcoin, which is the exchanges, just like you mentioned, Coinbase, and of course, Binance's and all those, wanted to increase the block size to solve the scalability problem. And big investors wanted the same thing. But who said no? It was the nodes. The nodes said no, because to increase the block size, you need to increase expenses of hosting and running a node. People, a regular average Joe, a regular person with a very average salary and living in a one-bedroom apartment will not be able to purchase and run a node because of bandwidth, because of equipment, and because of other things if the block size is big. And so what happens? The node will be operated by big money and people with resources and people with power. So it centralizes. It becomes a centralized coin. And thank God we didn't, thank God that didn't, the exchanges and big money did not win. And that's a prime example. The block wars are a prime example of why Bitcoin is so great and will always remain decentralized, because the little guy had a say and had power in changing things. And that's why. So look at Ethereum. Ethereum, they passed the, whatever you call it, the 1559, I think, without any say from the users or the, I mean, it's crazy. They changed that, tokenomics, really the economics of the monetary policy of the whole chain by passing 1559 for burning their own token. And the little guy is paying the price. And fees, high fees, people don't understand in Ethereum are here to stay. They're now a feature, not a bug in Ethereum. And that's what Bitcoin avoided. And that's why we don't increase the block size. That's why we needed a layer 2. And that's the Lightning Network. That's the value of the Lightning Network.
Adam, I'm curious, what are your feelings around the CTV Bitcoin update that Jeremy Rubin has presented, just through the lens of the way this update is being pushed through?
So I saw a little of it and I read a bit about it, but I'm wholeheartedly against it because I don't think it serves the network. I think it's another attempt to centralize, and we have the loud voices talking about ridiculous things like moving Bitcoin to proof of stake, which is ridiculous, cartoonishly ridiculous. But we have more insidious threats like this BIP something. I forgot what it's the number for it. I think that's very, very dangerous. I'm against it. I think it's not good for and I believe that the developers and have smart people like Andreas Antonopoulos. He really talked about it at length, way more knowledgeable than me. I'm nothing to him, and he explained it way more eloquently. I don't want to butcher it by talking about it, but I'm against it. I really am, and I run my own nodes, and that's why I'm against it. So, yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. I think that's why this discussion is happening, and we're witnessing it transpire in real time. I'm curious, what changes, if any, would you make to the Bitcoin just code right now?
I asked this question to Michael Saylor, and he got a little irked, I think, by the question, which is there is Bitcoin is not user friendly. It's just not. Try explaining it to my grandma. There's when I'm sure you guys remember when you were in high school or college, and in calculus or math class, the teacher starts writing something. You look away for a split second. And now the board is filled with rocket science math. That's kind of when you try to explain Bitcoin, we have that same problem. It goes, step 1 is this, step 2 is that, wallets, multisig, and now you lost everyone that is listening. There is that difficulty of explaining it. But I liked Michael's answer, which is people didn't understand electricity when it showed up. People didn't, still to this day, don't understand how computers work, but they use them. So that's not a problem for Bitcoin itself. It's going to be actually an opportunity for a lot of tech developers to build, to not change Bitcoin. So to answer your question, is not change Bitcoin, but change how it interacts with the user. There are, so running my own node and going on Raspberry Pis and the Raspberry Blitz and other OSs and other things, and let alone the shells and all that stuff, it's challenging for a lot of people. And we have a lot of 65-year-olds, a lot of 70-year-olds, even 50-year-olds who do not want to hear you talk about cold storage. They don't want that. Nobody wants, most people don't want cold wallets. Nobody wants, they say, we have $1 million. We want exposure to Bitcoin. Don't talk to me about cold wallets. Don't talk to me about nodes. Don't talk to me about, Lightning. I don't want to hear that. And understandable. And I understand that. Like, for example, people want to invest, for example, in Exxon Mobil. They don't know anything about oil, like that's understandable. Same thing with Bitcoin. People want to make money out of it or store it for the long haul, like me. And understandably, these people, most of them don't have the time and don't have the will or really the knowledge to understand it. And that's fine. And that's where I think the next phase for Bitcoin is. We have apps like Strike by Mahlers, which is super user-friendly. And I think that's what people want. I think that user-friendliness, Bitcoin core itself and Bitcoin itself unchanged. Very little changes. No changes. I love that it doesn't change. That's a great thing about it. It knows what it is. Unlike Ethereum doesn't know what it is. Bitcoin knows what it is. It knows and it's comfortable with that. The world changes. Bitcoin doesn't change. I love that. However, the apps that are built on layer 2, the apps that are the gateways to using the Lightning Network is decentralized, not owned by anyone, but the apps, your gateway to the network, of course, are owned by different companies and different people. And those are where innovation comes and user friendliness. Like when you give a Lightning Network or a Lightning payment app to your average grandma and she uses it easily, that's a success. That's when you have massive adoption, really.
It sounds almost like, and not to paraphrase or steal your words, but like what you're really looking for is the development for the UX to be so seamless, almost in the same way that like I couldn't tell you the code behind YouTube for those of you who are watching, or how all of that works on the back end necessarily. I just know that at one point during this, my camera shot out and had to unplug and replug it back in. That was the gist of it. But like, that's not the case with Bitcoin. You need to have, I think, a little bit more technical savvy. For the most part, I think there's offerings in America, at least, like Strike or Cash App, where it's as simple as the app that you already are familiar with sending money back and forth. But in reality, like, most people don't actually understand the nuances of an app like Venmo and how it's now linked to your bank account, and how Venmo gets access to that, pools it into their own hub of money that they then send off from that pool to the person you're trying to send money of. That's not really understood. It's, hey, I owe you $5 for whatever, the last round or whatever. I don't know. If you're Venmoing people for $5, you're an idiot, in my opinion. But that's just my 2 cents.
Can I add one thing also? It's not just the regular user. If we want to talk about big hedge fund managers and family offices and wealth funds, sovereign wealth funds and everything, these portfolios and that big money doesn't care about the tech. It doesn't care about a lot of the nuances that we care about. You know what they do? And I've worked in some portfolio management in the past. What they care about and the way they invest, they don't care about the price of the asset. They don't. They just say, this is my portfolio, 5%, 10%, put 5%, 10% allocation into Bitcoin, for example. They don't say, oh, buy Bitcoin at this price, buy 100 Bitcoins at this. No, they don't do that. they do allocations. They do 5%, 10%, 15%, whatever the percentage is. Allocate that into Bitcoin. This way you get exposure, you get a position. That's how they do it. You think they're not going to ask about the tech? Most of them don't. As long as they get a green light, or the, as long as they see, Chase or Goldman Sachs getting into it, that's their flag, that's their indicator, that's their green light. As long as the big guys in Wall Street are doing it, then that's our light. Let's do it. Allocate 3% into Bitcoin. They're not going to care about tech. That's how it is.
There was a question that just popped into my head and now it has escaped me. But Adam, talk a little bit about just sort of Amwal Network, how people can maybe learn more about or stay up to date with where you guys are working on with that.
So we started about a year ago. We are, I would like to say, pan Middle Eastern. We have myself, I'm the CEO and founder. I have Monis, who's a co-host. I have also Misra, who's a podcast host. We have a podcast as well. We also have Latif from Morocco. Misra is from Saudi Arabia. Latif is from Morocco. We have Bakr, who's from Algeria. He's the developer. And Zaid is the data developer. So our three main products is content education. That's via YouTube and also podcast. Our podcasts are very, very dense with information, economics and everything, stuff that is not friendly on YouTube. We put it's fascinating, very information rich. If you like that, if you are in the mood to learn about the US dollar, petrodollar, the history of gold, the history of fractional reserve banking, all that stuff, US crashes, inflation, that's our podcast. YouTube is where we talk about some altcoins and we educate on them really to avoid them sometimes and also to invest in them sometimes for trading. I specialize in Lightning Network and economics in general, and Bitcoin, of course. We were so privileged to be invited by Bitcoin Magazine to attend 2022, and we're coming in 23 for sure. And yeah, it's we have our website is amwal.network. And lastly, we have iOS apps and also our Android app. Just look for Amwal Network. You'll find it. And we're building a Lightning payment app. Hopefully, will be launched very soon. And it's going to be geared towards the Middle Eastern audience. They're going to be able to not just pay on it, but we want to do something like the Sphinx app, which is chat and send files and do stuff on the Lightning Network. That's another thing that could take us another 2 hours, which is the Lightning Network is not only for sending money for payment, it's also for you could send files, you could chat, you could do a lot of things. It's fascinating. We're only scratching the surface off of it. But our website is amwal.network, and it's where we have most of our links and everything.
I love that. I did now remember what I wanted to ask you, and it roots from your background as a financial investor and advisor. I'm curious. You touched on at the very beginning how you were brought and made aware of Bitcoin, but you were a little bit hesitant. Everyone says no to Bitcoin at their first time. What things that you learned in traditional finance did you have to unlearn to really understand Bitcoin? Other than the Fed knows what they're doing. That one we know you had to give up on.
That I needed to trust. Well, I didn't to trust the central authority. That the system, what we called it mainly in risk management, we called it systemic risk. Everything that is an outsider to the fiat system is a systemic risk. One of them is Bitcoin. Another is the underground, for example, the dark web economy. Anything is a systemic risk to the system. We have also over-leveraged MBSs, mortgage-backed securities, and we saw in 2008. Anything is systemic risk. But I never understood how rotten the system is from the inside. And that really kind of shocked me in I don't want to say in a traumatic way, but I took it for granted. I never, ever questioned it, that authority in the central bank and the government. I never questioned it. Even in school and at Penn State, I never questioned that, that Keynesian economics thing. I never questioned that authority, the government, and how it plays that pulling the only thing it does is pull the lever up and down for raising interest rates and lowering interest rates, and occasionally steps in to save the markets. That's it. But I took it for granted. You know how right now we're breathing without really thinking of our muscles and not thinking of the mechanism of breathing? Same thing for me as a traditional finance person. I never thought to question that, questioning authority. Until Bitcoin, I was like, what the hell is, like you could make more of it. Of course, you could just copy it. We could torrent it or something just because I was an idiot. And my wife thinks I still am, but yeah. So it's insane how when I learned about Bitcoin, and I understood the peer-to-peer power, and I understood the incentives and punishment mechanism, the protocols. Andreas Antonopoulos, I'm butchering his last name, I'm sorry, describes it so eloquently when he talks about the system of rewards and incentives. There's no need. Bitcoin, there is no police officer in the middle dictating everything. There is no third party. It's just, you want to participate in this network? Come on over. But if you cheat, you won't get the reward. Of course, that's bad because you have spent capital and money to join the network, especially miners. And that was just, I was like, holy cow, this is game theory 101. And I just couldn't believe this is so beautiful. And people who don't understand Bitcoin, again, I don't want to turn them off of Bitcoin by, I don't want to rattle them too much, but it takes a while. And I hope they just open their minds to the fact that there is a human nature system in the proof of work mechanism and in Bitcoin. There's there's game theory. It's beautiful when you look under the hood.
What is the thing that most excites you right now out of the Bitcoin space?
And right now, what excites me the most is I want people to, this is bad to say, I think, but I want people to forget about it. Remember when the news went so crazy in 2017, November and December 2017? It was insane. Bitcoin was everywhere. And it's just FOMO on high gear. And then it went down. It had that crash in 2018. And then people forgot about it. And that was beautiful because that was a great chance to accumulate. And that's the reason I don't have a day job. It's the reason I have a bunch of properties is because of that opportunity where I accumulated into Bitcoin at the time. And I still do to this day. And that's what I think is beautiful about it, is when people forget about it for a little bit, there will be an opportunity for us to get in and buy even more. Because when it takes off, when some people ask me, what is the indicator? What do you think is going to happen? What I think is going to happen, I think the Fed is going to raise a bit more their interest rates, and then they're going to cause a crash. It's almost inevitable. And then they will have to reverse. They will have to reverse their policy. And they will blame Putin, number one, in Russia. And number two is they will say, oh, we're doing it for, the high unemployment and other reasons. And then when we get the reverse, we will see Bitcoin skyrocket. What is the indicator? It's going to be the gold hitting 2,000 and Bitcoin getting to beat its all-time high. And then we will see decoupling from the Nasdaq. And then once it's over 100,000, you could forget about it. Even if it takes 6 months, a year.
You unlocked my favorite question, the one that I've been asked too many times that I'd ask. What, in your opinion, is causing this correlation, and what, in your opinion, is going to be the catalyst for the decoupling?
So the coupling of the Nasdaq and Bitcoin, well, not just the Nasdaq, really, it's the stock market in general, it's because of allocations and portfolio managers, hedge funds, and investors, family offices, and so on. When they build a portfolio, the traditional, the boring, the dumb 60-40 method of 60 stocks, 40 bonds, that's out of the window. So they started adding Bitcoin, some exposure to Bitcoin. And that's why. So when they sell off stocks, they will sell off Bitcoin. And when they accumulate stocks, they accumulate Bitcoin as well, because it's in the same portfolio. And that's where the coupling comes from, in my opinion. Decoupling will happen. So if we notice, and I believe year to date, since January 1st, Nasdaq is down 22%. I think I'm right, 22%. And Bitcoin is down 14%. So that's good. Decoupling is coming, but it's going to be gradual. When people will see, it's just the system is rotten, and people, the dollars, smart people, smart money is getting out of dollars. And once that sinks in for so many people, we will see that allocation in portfolios jump from 5% in Bitcoin to 30% in Bitcoin and higher. And that's when we get decoupling. It's gradual.
I love that. I was just quickly pulling up and can confirm that as of 11:16 a.m. Pacific time, the Nasdaq has made newer lows yet again. So we're in for a fun ride, guys. But fun fact, Bitcoin is just now broken just above 38,000. So
nice.
I really want those cheap sats.
Yeah. And Carrot, I told my viewers about Carrot last week. I said, download Carrot. You get so many sats. Just do it. And it's
Yeah, if you're already reading articles, especially articles from Bitcoin Magazine, you might as well just do it through the Carrot app, because you'll get 5 free sats. And yes, I know what 5 sats is equivalent to today, right now. But do not forget that one of your possibly great grandchildren will one day have only 37 sats as a reward on the final Bitcoin block. And so these single and double digit sat rewards that you get today that you scoff at will truly be generational wealth one day. But that's just me on my high horse. I'll come back down. Touch on something really interesting, Adam, and I want to explore it with you for the limited time we have. But you talk a little bit about how, the way fund managers design portfolio allocation is indicative of what we witness in the stock market. If people are being told, hey, we can only allocate 2.5%, we can only allocate 5% of this portfolio towards Bitcoin, and the price fluctuates, you're going to see selling and buying very, very often. So can you just maybe expand on that thought of what that looks like from someone who's been there and seen these things develop? How does that look on a day-to-day basis? How often are these portfolios getting reallocated? Is it on a weekly basis or a daily basis?
So with fund management and people who manage these big funds, especially with boardrooms and many stakeholders and investors, it's not like one person, like you and I could throw few $1,000s, not a problem, and hold it or sell it, whatever you want. It's up to you. You could invest in whatever you want. But in these funds, you would be questioned by your board. You would be questioned by your team. You are responsible in front of your investors on what to do. For example, especially in publicly traded companies with the actively managed funds, they need to sell. The CFO has to sell if it a specific amount of profit. Like, for example, if it makes 15% profit, they have to sell. Equally, if it loses a certain amount of percentage, they also have to sell. They have to divest based on a quarterly basis. It's not up to them. The CFO of any company, see, Michael Saylor could do it because he's the CEO, and that's a different story. But most public companies and even private companies cannot do that. They have to sell a certain amount of profit. You and I could ride the profit wave. This is awesome. I'm not going to sell it, and we spend years and years and years sitting on our Bitcoin. But companies cannot do that. That's what happens. Funds also have the same problem, especially when you have individuals who are waiting for a specific amount of profit or divesting or all these things. So it's not up to them. And the short answer is there are many stakeholders and many decision makers, and decisions are slow, and also fear could be high. So whenever inflation news comes up and interest rates and buying real estate, for example, before the Fed raises rates again, and you need liquidity, and you have $100 million sitting in stocks and Bitcoin, you need to liquidate to buy more land and more real estate, more property. So that's why you sell. So it's a different ball game, I would say. A different. That's why. It's just many decision makers, many stakeholders.
Awesome. Well, Adam, really appreciate that and our entire conversation. I wanted to give you an opportunity to let everyone in the audience sort of know where they can learn more about you, stay up to date with all the projects at Amwal, maybe what your Twitter and all that jazz is.
Thank you. Appreciate you. And thanks, Chris. And tell Alex. So a funny story, you didn't mention that. When Alex walked into the hall, I thought he was Brian Armstrong from Coinbase.
Oh no, we know that story. We have not let that joke die. So
Good,
thank
good.
you.
You're not the only one to say that too. So
Really?
many people thought he's Brian Armstrong. Like, Brian, can we get an interview? He's like, I'm not Brian. But
Oh my, I thought it was only me. Oh man.
Everyone needs to get off their computers and go outside more. Like, seriously, guys.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate the privilege and the opportunity. So our website is amwal.network. That's it, amwal.network. YouTube is just Amwal, which means money in Arabic. Twitter is Amwal Network, just one word, Amwal Network. And that's where you find most. So just Google Amwal Network, you'll find hopefully a lot of information. We educate on Bitcoin, and we do data, provide data, and also Lightning Network solutions. That's what we do. That's our new venture, is Lightning Network solutions, apps and nodes, building apps and nodes. So thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Awesome, Adam. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be back shortly, and we're going to be joined by the Foss boss himself, as well as Dr. Jeff Ross, and we're going to dive into these markets and figure out what the hell is going on. So stick around through this commercial break, and we'll be back shortly.
What's up, Q?
What is up, Chris? How you doing, man?
Good, hanging in there. That was a good talk. I didn't know that much about Adam beforehand, but I obviously did my research before looking into it. But I wish I had a chance to meet him at the conference. I think he interviewed CK. I saw some videos of him talking to CK at the conference and stuff. But it's cool. It's interesting. Bitcoin's for everyone. That's the message.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it is. I had a chance to meet him for like half a second right before dealing with news desk drama, but this is just a reminder that Bitcoin is a global network. Like, the monetary systems and benefits that we have had here in America and throughout the Western developed world is not the same benefits that we've seen throughout the rest of the world. It's very interesting also just to see the perspective and how people in that region of the world view both Bitcoin and money in general. So curious to see how things will further develop. I'm sure we'll continue our conversations with Adam, and there'll be more to come out of that part of the world, especially so long as I have a say in it. But I digress, man. In the Bitcoin world, we talked a little bit at the end of our conversation with Adam, and before we dive into things with Jeff and Greg, honestly, the OS duo.
Greg's here. Should I let him in?
Yeah, feel free to let him in. I just want to remind everyone, though, that all of our Bitcoin 22 swag is still available for a limited time in the Bitcoin magazine store. So be sure to go check all that stuff out. Use promo code FOMO and you'll get 10% off of anything that you get there, including the latest issue of Bitcoin magazine, which I probably should have kept more handy. But feel free to get this as well. If you are not already a subscriber to the print mag, if you order it online, you can use the promo code FOMO. But if you want to go to a brick and mortar shop, they are available at Barnes and Nobles. So be sure to check that out as well. Foss, man, how are you doing?
Greg's still not on camera yet, but I think he's
coming. Hello, fellas. Hello.
No, you're fine. We're winging it. How you doing?
Yeah, man, I'm good. You got to tell. Is this live now, or are we just?
Oh, we are live.
We're rolling.
We love doing it like this. How you doing? How's the road tripping been for you? I know that you had a fun little road trip down to Miami.
Yeah, well, I didn't drive down there, but I'm not sure if I told you guys, but my wife and I actually are property owners in Florida now.
Oh,
so
nice.
My wife already had it's a long story, but I was planning to leave a truck in Florida, and then women do. Never mind. At the end of the day, I had to end up driving it back, and it just aligned well with the conference and everything. And I love driving. I'm not sure how everyone else feels about it. I know a lot of people hate it, but I actually don't even turn the radio on that much, and I just think about stuff. I find it's you disconnect from the world and you do some deeper thinking. So I love driving. USA is a beautiful country. Yeah, so I've driven a lot this year. And from Miami, I was in Georgia. Here's my claim to fame. I was in Georgia for the final day of the Masters. I didn't get to Augusta, but I got to a place in Georgia, Savannah to be exact. And then I drove all the way from Savannah back to Canada the next day. So, you know what? Good time. There he is. Hello, doctor.
What's going on, Greg? How you doing? Chris, Q?
What is up,
Jeff?
What's shaking?
Let's do some cooking, guys. We have, honestly, Jeff, your comment about the Wizards of Oz. I had to compose myself because I was on live, but that is the funniest thing.
Can you share with me? I don't know what it is. I don't know the comment.
Well, you know how we talk about the Oss brothers, right?
Oh, okay.
Oss,
Yeah.
Ross, Moss, and everybody's coming up with marketing things like ossification or whatever. The Wizards of Oz, like the Wizards of Oz, right?
I love it.
The three dudes behind the curtain follow the orange brick road. That's what somebody said on the
YouTube. Yeah.
On the YouTube channel. Yeah.
Nice.
I think that could work.
Yeah, well, Mark is a great guy. You guys, you guys will pull me along in your vortex. Okay, so I'll just I'll participate, and you guys can, you can pull this fat old 58-year-old along in your vortex. So,
I'm just going to continue to push forward the rumor that you can never see all three of the Oz trio at the same place at the same time.
Well, weren't we all together in Miami? I mean, I think all three of us were together.
We were all in Miami, but not up on stage at the same time.
Never on stage, which is okay. You don't want, you got to confuse the opposition, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, I thought there was a picture. If we haven't pulled up a picture yet, whereabouts in the United States are you, Jeff? Or are you
I'm in Colorado Springs.
Oh, cool. Hey, listen, by the way, well, I'll talk to you offline afterwards, but I'm going to be at the Mark Moss event in Dallas this weekend.
Nice.
Hold on. We're Monday. Yeah. This weekend, I'm going to be at the Mark Moss event in Dallas. But then there's something else happening afterwards. Maybe if you can actually even drive from Las Vegas to Colorado if you had to, right? So there's something going on in Las Vegas in the next little
Todd
while.
Alt's thing.
Do you know Todd? Yes. So actually,
we had Todd on last week.
I'm a pretty big fan of his. I know that. Anyway, the point is, I'm going back there, so I'm going to be hopscotching around the USA for a little while, and he's a good man, Taha. So anyway, let me reach out to you. I have an opportunity to make you happy, perhaps.
Are you looking for a place to? Are you looking for a place to crash? I can put you up.
No, man. I'm looking. I actually have been offered some tickets, some free tickets, and some free accommodations. And
all right,
if you're in Colorado, I mean, it's not that hard to hop in a car, and I bet you it depends what part of Colorado you live in, but I know I drove from Las Vegas to Aspen, Colorado, in one day, and it took, I don't know, didn't it take around 7 hours or 6 hours, something like that? And it was a nice drive, you know. So
yeah. Sure. Well,
anyway,
let's
talk offline, and that'll be the OS squared. And if Mark Moss is in the vicinity, then we could really confuse things and see if we could get all three of us in the same house. But yeah, hey guys, thanks for having me. I sent out my Twitter poll. People actually don't mind my swearing, so I'm gonna probably let a few F-bombs fly if I have to. I need to couch that with the following explanation though. And like, I swear when I get excited, because if you've ever been on a trading floor when things are imploding, it's an absolute circus, and everybody is screaming and yelling, and every third word is the F word, just cause it's not fun. You know, you got salesmen who are trying to protect the clients, and then you feel that the clients are working against you. So you hate your salesman, even though you're working on the same team and he's trying to defend his salesman, and you're like, go tell your fucking account to pound sand. He's buried me on this fucking position, and you're swearing and cursing, and it's just the way capitalism works, you know. But anyway, the Twitter poll came back, and I'm happy to try and tell the truth, because that's all you can do, right? Is tell truth. And this weekend had some eye-opening statements by some very influential, noble Americans. I'm referring specifically to Charlie Munger, but at this point, the conversation's open for discussion, however you guys want it to flow.
I think it's a fair place for us to start. Like, for those who are not aware, Charlie Munger did the Munger thing, and essentially just him and Warren Buffett shat on Bitcoin to cheers from an audience calling upon the US legislators to follow what communist China has done as far as Bitcoin goes. And I think it's very telling, both for where we are as a market, but also just where the sentiment is for a certain class of people. Jeff, I'd love.
And you could, sorry, if I could jump in, and we'll let Jeff talk first, but he didn't just, what he used was the word evil. All right. Now that's what I took exception with. Evil is certainly not what Bitcoin is. Evil is when you try and co-opt people into believing something because it is contrary to your positioning within your own portfolio. They own so many banks and legacy traditional finance platforms that are going to get carved and carved again and carved again because of Bitcoin. It's not surprising that they say what they say, but calling it evil and then defending a communist government for banning it. I mean, if I was his son, I would be like, okay, Dad, time to get off the fucking deck, and you push that you push that thing into the sidelines, because he is actually destroying quite a proud history of him helping the U.S. Get to the #1 spot in the global economy, and rightly so. Look, Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett have done some incredibly smart and good things for America. My opinion is this is not the right way for them to go out, okay? And that's where I take issue with. You can have a divergence of opinion, but to outright call something evil, and that many people, 40,000 pilgrimers who go to Omaha to listen to him cheer, man, those poor people are going to be left behind. And yet all they want to do is participate in capitalism, because that's what Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett are. At the heart, they are capitalists. Now, they have benefited from the fiat Ponzi and the Fed backstop. There's no question. But no, they are not communists at heart. And if they are truly communists at heart, oh, fuck off, okay? Because at the end of the day, then they have bled the American system and now are promoting something that just is un-American as far as I'm concerned. Hey, and anyone who's listening, I'm Canadian, okay? We are way closer to being communists than the United States is. So I know what it feels like. So let's just make sure we understand you can have a divergence of opinion, but to call something evil, man, oh man, that's just, you know, the gloves are off. Okay. The Canadian hockey players are going to drop their gloves now and just have to brawl it out. And that's how you settle things. And Jeff, sorry to jump in front of you, but you know, that markets, you can make markets, you can do whatever you want, a buyer, seller, everything. But to use pejoratives like the word evil in the context of them being some sort of crispy kings that have, you know, certainly benefited from the fiat backstop that is the Federal Reserve, I have an issue with that. So over to you, Jeff.
Well, first of all, I agree with 100% of what you just said, Greg. So I mean, we're on the same page. Obviously, I do have, obviously, I actually come from a very value-oriented background. That's how my fund started. I was a value-oriented stock picker, and I ran my fund that way. And then along came Bitcoin, and my life changed. But that's a story for another day. But I got a question for you guys. Who said, "Show me the incentive, and I will show you the outcome"?
I believe that's a Munger quote from him himself.
That is Charlie Munger, and that's what I tweeted out yesterday. I said, "This is Charlie Munger on why Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett are anti-Bitcoin. They are incentivized to hate Bitcoin. They are incentivized to be very, very pro-US dollar, pro-fiat. You know, they've become billionaires. They're wildly successful. They played the game right. They were alive at exactly the right time in American history to get wildly, wildly wealthy and be wildly successful. And you know what? More power to them. That's part of capitalism, right? They made a lot of great decisions. I think it's sort of funny, and I actually think it's more tragic than funny that people keep asking them their opinions on Bitcoin, because of course they don't understand, right? They're incentivized to not understand. They're incentivized to hate it. And so Bitcoin changes the incentive structure for everybody who's around. These, you know, no offense to them, but look, I'm a doctor, right? I understand how human life works. These guys aren't going to be around much longer, right? They may go to their graves, and I'm not wishing that on them, but they will go to their graves most likely without ever understanding Bitcoin. And it doesn't matter for them. They're doing just fine, right? The system is just fine. They're going to die billionaires and give all their money away. Good for them. That's them. But for the rest of us who are going to be around for decades, and for the kids, my kids these days who are teenagers, they have 80 years to go or so. They need a better structure. They don't need to be part of this collapsing fiat debacle. They don't need Keynesian economics to ruin their lives the way we're seeing it happen right now and ruin the world, literally, to fund wars, to fund crony capitalism. We don't need that structure anymore. We know that these are in their final days. Bitcoin changes everything. And so I don't really care what Buffett and Munger have to say. In fact, the fact that they hate it actually just solidifies the reasons why I love it and why I'm going to keep telling people about it. But
yeah, and I agree, Jeff. You know, here's the thing, though. They influence so many people that do believe the sun rises out of their arsehole, right? I mean, that's just the way that people get, you know, addicted to the success or to the aura that surrounds a place like Berkshire Hathaway. I mean, you know, look, he's everybody's grandfather. The guy is, look, I don't have an issue with him. What I have an issue with is the context in which there's two outcomes here. They are not smart enough to understand what they are saying, which if that's in fact the case, then you shouldn't have your money with them. Okay. But I believe they are smart enough to understand what they're saying. They are telling untruths, though, as you said, and it's the people that they will impact. Okay. They are going to be fine. Their families are going to be just fine. And the people that have followed them thus far have done a good job in following them. I just think they're giving bad info. And again, they are not intellectually lazy. I don't think they understand it, but I think they are, it's like listening to research that confirms your own bias, right? It's called a confirmation bias. You are actually supposed to read research that is against the position that you hold, so you can learn as to why your position may be wrong. But everybody tends to read research that confirms their bias. So if you're long a stock, you love to read research as to why you're so smart being long this stock. The actual research you're supposed to read is the research that tells you why you were wrong for being long that stock. But people don't do that. They love to, you know, feel good about their decisions. It's like why people sell their winners and hold their losers. They love to crystallize their gain and hope the losers come back. But when you go to a cocktail party, it's very few people that brag about how bad they've done in the stock market. They all brag about their winners, right? And so that's part of the human nature you talk about. I worked at a hedge fund with a guy that he studied as much philosophy and psychology of investing as he did the numbers. He was really good at both of them, but it's when you bring in the psychological aspects of a market that you can start to break away from the traditional math-based models, okay? Like today's markets are broken. There's no question that the equity market is probably on a long-term horizon right now. It's getting, I think you may have even said, it's getting to oversold levels. It's panic. Did you see this weekend that the Association of, the AAII, American Association of Individual Investors, so that's basically small investors, came out with a poll, and they run that poll every weekend in Barron's, the most bearish it's ever been. Okay. And when I say that, it's rivaling March 2009, exactly when the equity markets started to come out of their funk from the great financial crisis. This is a good contrarian indicator that people are now trading with emotion rather than logic, okay? And all of this is to say that markets regularly get broken. You need insurance against the traditional markets. And that is what both you and I believe we have found with Bitcoin. And it pains me when people that are as smart as Charlie and Warren are, at least historically, i.e. if you drive through their rear view mirror performance, it pains me when it appears they haven't done the work that's required to help people going forward. And so over to you. Oh, you're on mute.
I think you're muted.
I'm
Jeff.
muted. Sorry about that. I muted myself. Yeah, I mean, I just completely agree with everything you say, Greg. Right. So I mean, like they did a fantastic job for the last 80 years. And that's the time that they should have been long America and long the fiat system, and now we're just at a transition point right now. So that is not the best way pointing forward. If they wanted to really help people going forward, absolutely they would take the time to understand what Bitcoin is and learn about it, and learn about how detrimental the current fiat system is. Learn that we're at the edge of collapse. Learn that we're seeing cracks in the foundation right now. And point people to a better way. But I don't see that happening. I'm not going to hold my breath waiting for that for sure. So here we are.
And it's ugly. It's ugly. So let's talk some macro statistics. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
This is your show right now.
Well, you know that I've spent my whole life as essentially a credit trader, but you need to understand when you trade credit, really what you're trading is risk or volatility. Okay. And credit is a shitty tool, because it's really asymmetric to the downside. Ricardo Salinas said this at the Bitcoin conference, but you got to understand it's not quite as black and white as he lays out, because when a bond is issued, it typically is issued at 100 cents on the dollar, and then the contract or the adjustment for the risk is set by the coupon on the bond. Okay, in the case of the U.S. Treasury, that basically is set on a daily basis, the shape of the yield curve. But I traded high yield or junk bonds my whole life. So it's all about the coupon you get on that debt that implicitly rewards you for the risk you are taking over straight treasury risk or inflation risk predominantly. That credit risk is a risk that compensates you for, amongst other things, default risk, and then the liquidity or illiquidity of the investment. When you want to sell something, I guarantee you can't, because everybody is trying to sell the bond at the same time. So it's like asymmetric to the downside in the short term, but in the long term, that incremental coupon has been proven to actually pay you for the risk, provided there is no default. If there's a default, you blend that in with your whole portfolio. That was the argument for high yield bonds. So I was a volatility trader, and I always look to the credit markets as the dog, as I say, and then the equity markets are the tail, because the credit markets have a prior claim on the assets of a company, versus the equity. Unless the debt's worth 100 cents on the dollar, the equity has zero claim. In the event of a bankruptcy, there's usually what's called a cram down, and both, the equity gets a token restructuring. Okay, agree with this plan, and you'll get a restructuring option, if you will. But long story short, bonds, as Ricardo Salinas said, in the absence of thinking about what the coupon rewards you with, what's the best thing that can happen? You get your money back, right? Like, I mean, that's what it sounds like. You invest $100 in a company for 5 or 10 years. And after 5 or 10 years, if everything goes swimmingly, you got your $100 back, not including the debasement of the purchasing power over that time. But it's the same thing with the US Treasury. It's all about the coupon that they are set on those bonds. Well, here's some statistics, and this is scary. The VIX today, which is the volatility index on equities measured minute to minute in the United States, hit 35% annualized. I need you guys to understand two things. The first thing is, and this is most important, a 35% annualized VIX translates to a daily volatility of over 2% on a daily basis, which means equity prices will swing by 2% daily. And the way you get that, for anyone who cares, is you divide the VIX by the square root of 256, which is the number of trading days in the year. So 36 divided by 16 gives you your daily vol. Okay, you got to understand that a 2% swing in equity prices is almost equivalent to the 10-year yield on the bond, which means if you own bonds and stocks and your equity is swinging around 2% and your yield on the 10-year US Treasury is only 3%, you have a bad day trading equities, and you've given up more than half of your coupon on your bond, okay? Second, and equally as important, new issue markets are closed when VIX is over 25%. That's just my experience over my career, that new issue markets close when the VIX gets over 25%. Again, today it's at 35%, which essentially means new issue markets are closed. Access to growth capital is shut. Companies that have growth opportunities and want to fund themselves and help the American economy expand do not have access to that public funding. New issue markets are shut when the VIX is over 25. Things are ugly out there. And Jeff, how many times has the Fed raised so far? Oh, you're still on mute. I'll answer my own question. Once, okay? Now, there you go, brother. Now, here's the crazy thing. They're going to raise another 9 times? Aha, fuck. Are you kidding me? This isn't even in the context of how stupid people can be to believe that that's actually possible. But we got the Goldman Sachs out there. You know, as they said on that, there was a great parody, the Goldman Sachs, or whatever they called them, but the German guy that was impression, you know, the Goldman Sachs are out there as the mouthpiece for the Fed to try and jawbone the markets into believing this. There's no one at Goldman that actually believes they have 9 interest rate hikes in them before the equity markets absolutely implode, and quantitative easing actually has to be put back on the table. Okay, that again is the Fed using Goldman Sachs as their mouthpiece to try and jawbone the market into believing this is possible. There's an old adage, and over to you after this, Jeff, I promise. It's called 3 hikes and a stumble. Okay, that's it. Google it. 3 hikes and a stumble. And it's a historical adage in the financial markets that applies to Fed rate hikes. Now, you know, there's whether it's 25 basis points or 50 basis points, I promise you, if it's 75 basis points, 2 successive 75 basis points hikes, okay, see ya. Bye. Yep. It's over. You guys are done. Baked, cooked. See ya, see ya, see ya. That being said, they're still trying to job on the markets there. So look, bonds are the most horrible investment I've ever seen still. And they've lost in the last month 10% of their value in the long end. Okay. And they have another 20% of value to lose if the Fed sticks to their plan. The good news is, I don't think the Fed can stick to their plan. which means QE infinity, which means any reason that you would buy bonds here, you have twice the reason to buy Bitcoin, because anything that'll float the bond back on side will be twice as impactful to the Bitcoin price, in my opinion, because that's what Bitcoin is. It is credit protection against infinite printing by the Fed. And guess what? The equity markets are begging for infinite printing. And who owns the pensions of the common American? Well, the voters. And if they all of a sudden see that their pension plans are unfunded or underfunded because the equity markets have just lost 22% in the first quarter, the worst start ever in history of the Nasdaq, okay? 22% down in the first quarter. If you're a pensioner and you call up your local congressman and you're like, I was counting on retiring and now my pension plan isn't fully funded. What the absolute F? This is after one rate hike. Sorry, Jeff, over to you, brother.
Don't be sorry, Greg. I could listen to you talk about this stuff all day. It's fantastic. And again, I agree with you. That's the problem, right? You're just confirming all of my biases as well. So that's not very helpful. But I agree with you. I think, the Fed is going to, I think they're absolutely going to raise rates this week, right? So 50 bips, maybe 75 bips. Will they do it again at the next meeting? Probably. What will the markets do? They're going to flip out, right? They're going to tank. And that's what people keep asking me. They're like, you're Dr. Bear, you're so bearish. How could you be bearish? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you guys, there is nothing good on the horizon right now. The economy sucks. Look at what the companies are saying. They just reported Q1 earnings. They were terrible. And guess what they're saying? Q2 earnings, they're going to be even more terrible. Why? The economy sucks right now. And the Fed is tightening right now, right? Inflation is high. We've probably peaked though, and we can talk about that if that's something you want to talk about. I think we're close to a peak right now. It's probable that the April number when it gets released is somewhere around maybe 8.5%. Who knows? Maybe a little lower, maybe a little higher, but somewhere around there. I think we're at or near the peak. When you have the combination, and I keep saying this, of disinflation and a decelerating GDP, a decelerating economy, risk on assets hate that. What does that mean? Stocks go down. They've gone down already. They can go down further. They are still very highly valued. Tech stocks are still overvalued. You think Shopify is bad because it's gone down 70 to 75%? It can drop another 50% and it would still be a little bit overvalued. So careful about buying what you think is the bottom right now. So
that's our most valuable tech stock in Canada, Jeff. You can't do that. You
I'm
can't
sorry.
do that to us Canadians.
Greg. Let's keep it into the US here. Let's talk about Apple. Apple, everybody owns Apple, right? Apple is still overvalued, you guys. Apple is an awesome company. I like Apple. I use Apple products. I'm talking on an iMac right now. But you know what? Apple can go down further too. All of these things that we've seen as safe haven assets over the last decade since the Fed began pumping back in 2009, 2010, they have further to fall. They have been just going, their valuations have been increasing, even though their earnings have not kept up with their valuation. So what we're seeing here is a devaluing of these currency, a revaluation of these stocks, and they have further to fall. So if the economy continues to look bad, people are not going to go for a tech company with a price to sales ratio of 20 or 25 or even 15 or 10. Those are obnoxious valuations that we got used to over the past 5-10 years. They're still way too high. They still have further to fall. To Greg's point, if the Fed keeps trying to tighten to fight inflation, the markets are going to have an absolute tantrum. And then to Greg's point again, sorry, I'm just not trying to be a yes man, but I just agree with everything you say. The Fed they're locked. They've painted themselves in a corner. They have to do QE again. QE4, I'm telling people, it will absolutely put QE 1, 2, and 3 to shame. It will be so much bigger. You won't even notice those little blips. If we look back in history, when you see QE4 and how much they're going to add to the balance sheet, it is going to absolutely dwarf those. Assets are going to take off again. They're going to get just inflated to just obnoxious prices. You guys, the only thing to get out of this obnoxious, crazy circus world system that we're in is Bitcoin. I just beg you to get some in your portfolio. If you don't have any, get off zero, get to 1%. Even 1% will save your portfolio. I'll stop there, Greg. I know you have
buddy. So listen, I just want to hit on a few things. You mentioned price to sales multiples. I'm sure that there are certain stocks trading at a 20 price to sales, But in the case of Apple, let's be honest, it's like 2 or 3 times price to sales. You might have been referring to their price earnings ratio at that point, but there's lots of stupid stuff that is trading at 20 times sales. But those things have already been crushed so badly, you don't have to worry about that. What I want to mention, though, a couple of excellent points you brought up. Okay. Let's assume that the CPI number is correct, okay, at 8.5% annual. Not the double digit that it could possibly be measured as if you go back to the shadow stats and everything. I agree that there's a chance that inflation has peaked, but inflation compounds. This is what people don't understand, that 8.5 going down to 6.5 is not a victory, okay? 8.5 in your first year and 6.5 in your second year, that's disinflation. But over 2 years, that is over 16% compounded, okay? Because much like they said that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world, the same mathematics works for inflation. And something that starts at 8.5%, goes to 6.5%, goes to 5%, goes to 3%, goes to negative 3%, which is deflationary once you're there. By the way, the capitalist system does not deal well with deflationary numbers because the banking system itself starts to collapse. Point being, 8.5 down to 6.5, down to 5, down to 3, down to 1, down to -2, down to -2. You do that math, you are still something like 3% annualized, okay? Inflation. That's still above the Fed's target over that period of 7 years that I've just laid out. That's not a good outcome, okay? Deflation and disinflation, maybe it peaked, but it compounds. That's very important. And it's the laws of mathematics, okay? So never fight math.
And can I jump in here real quick, Greg?
Sure,
what I like to remind people, because we talk about inflation a lot and economists throw that term around, it's sometimes people get confused by what exactly that means because a lot of people don't really get it. What we're talking about here, you guys, is think of it as just you're losing your purchasing power. What does it mean to lose your purchasing power? Life gets more expensive. Have you noticed that groceries at the grocery store are more expensive? Gas is more expensive. College tuition is more expensive. Pick anything and it's more expensive. Why? Inflation. That's monetary currency debasement. To Greg's point, when you lose, we lost 8.5% year over year as of March. And even if we see disinflation, even if inflation comes down, you see that on the headline numbers, that money is gone forever. That purchasing power is gone forever. So even if it goes down to, say, 5% by the end of this year or 3% 2 years from now, who knows? You still have lost that forever. Life is that much more expensive, and that's the new plateau. And then it's going to still keep creeping higher, even if inflation keeps coming down. Life is still getting more and more expensive year after year after year. Okay, take
Perfect.
it from there.
Then that's exactly what I was trying to say in not as eloquent terms, but yes, life is still getting more and more expensive. So the final thing I wanted to hit on is the way that they jawboned the absolutely horrendous Q1 GDP number that was a contraction in the economy, okay? And this is outrageous. This is a contraction in the economy after 3 months, which I will remind your listeners what a definition of a recession is 2 consecutive quarters of economic contraction. Well, we've already put 1 in the books, okay? We are already halfway to a recession as defined being 2 consecutive quarters of contraction. Oh, it was all because of the trade deficit. So don't worry, everything's going to be fine. I'm going to throw out at you, yes, and interest rates were only at 1 interest rate increase that happened, and now you're talking about doing another 7 or 8? Come on, guys. This is such blatant lying right to you. And then, oh, well, it's Putin's fault. Okay, so, I'm just sick to my stomach with all these talking heads lying to the people. Have to bring up my friends at Berkshire Hathaway as well. I don't believe they are telling the truth as they know it, but they are, they're allowed to say whatever they say. But to use the word evil, I think the word evil actually applies to some of these statisticians and how they interpret the result, the Q1 result. This was an outlier. Everyone was expecting growth and it comes in negative and they talk about it like, oh, it was just because of the trade deficit. Yeah, exactly. The trade deficit. And the dollar has done nothing but strengthen since then. That an increasing dollar does not make your trade deficit gets better, it makes it get worse because foreign products become less expensive and your own products become more expensive on a global market. That's what happens when the value of your fiat increases relative to the other shit coins in the world. All fiats are shit coins. Quoting Ricardo Salinas, my partner on stage, who, my God, if you don't listen to what 4 billionaires have to say in as succinct terms as they can, if you guys want to run into the wall and listen to Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, at least balance it with other billionaires who see things opposite of Charlie Munger. And if you still want to cheer a room full of Midwestern Nebraska people, good on you. I suggest you open your eyes and ears to what's really going on in the rest of the world, including the 4 people I was on stage with in Bitcoin Miami. 3 of them don't live in the United States. They've experienced things that most United States people don't experience. Why? Because the USA is still the most privileged and strongest economy in the world, rightly so. But you guys are doing a hell of a job of fucking it right up, okay? And I don't want that to be the case, but you really are fucking it right up.
I love it. Hey, so, and one quick point, let's go back to talking about the recession. You guys know I've been bearish, right? I've been just blatantly bearish about what the economy is going to do, all this, and what stocks are going to do, risk on assets. I did not expect a negative GDP in Q1. That took me by surprise. So it was even more bearish than I thought it was going to be. That's saying something. I was talking about, I'm bearish now. I think the second quarter is going to suck. I don't think we're going to have a recession until as late as Q4 2022, maybe sometime early 2023. Look, you guys, we might be in a recession right now. You often don't know you're in one because you have to get to that second quarter of contraction in order to kind of officially declare a recession. Things are bad out there right now, you guys. The system is crumbling right before your eyes. It's getting weak, and the Fed is tightening. That is not the time to tighten. You don't tighten into weakness, or you cause things to literally crash down. A 50% drop in equities during a recession is not abnormal. That's actually kind of normal. So again, you guys, be very careful about what's going on. Think about downside protection. Think about hedging yourself. Think about long-term protection against a collapsing fiat system with Bitcoin. It is the ultimate hedge. It's the ultimate insurance against a collapsing fiat system. And we're seeing this. We're going to have more and more opportunities. You guys, Bitcoin is so dirt cheap right now compared to how expensive it should be because of the value that it offers. Trade your dirty cuck bucks into Bitcoin as quickly as you can. Not individual investment advice, just my opinion. I'm sorry. But while that has value, trade it in for some Bitcoin. Please, please, please. I'll stop, Greg.
Not a boy. No, and let's just, you got to build on facts. Today, I'm not sure how many people saw it. There was a momentary flash crash in Europe. Okay. European, predominantly Norwegian or whatever they call that part of the world. I should know because I'm
Scandinavia?
from Norway. Scandinavian stock indices dropped by 8% on a flash crash. Flash crashes don't typically happen when liquidity is being injected into the market. Flash crashes happen when either a fat finger hits the wrong key, or there's no bid in the market because people don't really want to buy anything. In fact, they have to sell stuff. Okay. So as a trader, sometimes you try and build up your position by saying you put in a big bid, but the reality is you're trying to sell something and you want to fake out the market that there's a big buyer when in fact, all you're trying to do is get some buyer to step in front of you so you can fill his boots and meet your margin call. Okay. When all those bids evaporate out of the market, things flash crash. Well, today there was a fast flash crash in Scandinavia. It's reported by the Wall Street Journal. I wasn't trading it. I don't have global positions anymore in my books. That being said, I do know what it feels like when liquidity is being withdrawn from the system, and that's when things break. Okay. I made a quote on Friday. Here's a little joke, right? What's the last thing that goes through a bee's brain when it hits your windshield? Have you guys heard that joke? His asshole. Okay. So the bee's asshole goes through his brain. Okay. And I said that the close on Friday was like a bee hitting your windshield, right? Poof. And the poor guy's asshole goes through his brain. Right. And that's what the close felt like on Friday. Today, it feels like you're running into a flock of seagulls in your truck, okay? Boom, 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 fucking seagulls are bouncing off your windshield, okay? And you just don't get what it's like being on a trading floor when you're driving through a flock of seagulls and everyone's trying to fuck you sideways, okay? And your salesman's trying to fuck you even though you're on the same team as him, because he's trying to get one of his accounts out of a fucking shit position that, hey, Foss, don't you remember you sold this fucker the shit position? And I'm like, he's stupid enough to buy it. Now go tell him to fuck himself. And all of a sudden you're like in a war of words and seagulls are hitting your fucking windshield left, right, and center. And guess what? That's what happens when liquidity gets taken out of the system. And we've only done one rate hike. Are you kidding me? This is hilarious. This is Clown World Central. This is fucking moronic. And you have Charlie Munger saying, well, everything's going to be fine because, you know, we're protecting the Federal Reserve. They're the arseholes that got us into this problem. Okay, so get your protection. Don't listen to these guys. And when you drive through a flock of seagulls, sort of giggle to yourself and say, boy, are these birds ever stupid, right? Like they set themselves up for this thing. They're pretending they're going to raise rates and you'll be able to drive down the beach with no seagulls. No. You're going to be smashing into seagulls, and then you're going to start hitting Canadian geese, and then you're probably going to start hitting some people that can't get out of the fucking way, and you're going to be bouncing fat beachgoers off your windshield. This is ugliness. Jim Cramer had a rant on CNBC in 2007, eloquently rephrased, or not rephrased, but brought up this weekend by Zero Hedge. They have no idea what's going on out there. Look up this rant, okay? 2007, Jim Cramer. They know nothing. Now, Cramer knows nothing as well, but he does know how to read markets. And when he had that rant, he was absolutely right. What did it succeed in doing? It taught the equity market into getting the Fed to ease going into the great financial crisis. The equity market traded up for about 2 months after the Cramer, or I call him Cramer, the Cramer rant. Equity guys felt good. Guess what? Credit was going in exactly the wrong direction. You got to watch credit. And in October of 2007, it gave up the ghost, okay? Even though the Fed eased and the equity markets were all happy for a little while, 10 months later, the world almost unraveled. And I'm going to throw out one final stat for you. The TARP, the Troubled Asset Relief Program, was less than a $1 trillion rescue package. Jeff mentioned that the next one is, well, Biden just announced some multiple of $1 trillion deficit spending as a relief, and we weren't even in a recession. What is the next one going to require? That's what Jeff says. Think about the size of the next package that is going to require to move the needle again. And why are tech stocks with multiples that there was nothing else to buy, so you had to buy your growth in tech stocks? Those multiples are coming down. Things are not looking good, people. Good call, Jeff, on the irrational exuberance that was in the markets. The AAII is not wrong, but my thought is, I thought today would be a little bit of a bounce, and the markets haven't closed yet, and I'm not looking at it, but I imagine the VIX is still around 35%. If it is, watch it into the close. And we got Tuesday, turned around Tuesday, and then we got Fed Wednesday. And the week is, it's like not even, anyway, the seagulls are going to be bashing off your window. Okay, guys. It's never fun. My wife once drove through a flock of blackbirds on the side of the highway, and she was crushed for like the sound of it hitting your truck and bouncing off your truck. It's sickening as these birds go flying everywhere. But I've also driven into a Canada goose that shattered my windshield. These are big things, okay? Mm-hmm. These are not bumblebees. We are talking about driving through birds now, okay? And it'll soon be even bigger. So position your portfolio accordingly. It is ugly. And I think that Jerome Powell, he's probably on about the 16th hole right now. So he's going to actually probably have to figure out what he's going to do within the next couple of days, even though that's baked into the cards. Yes, Jeff, I think he absolutely has to raise. But honestly, it's like, no, they shouldn't raise. But how much more can they cut? They can't. So right. QE infinity. Pure math. Yeah, thanks.
That was the best analogy. I was actually crying. I was laughing so hard. Just picturing the thump, 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 the birds hitting the windshield. Yes, great points. I've had lots of thoughts while you were talking about that. Another thought I had was I'm old enough, I'm 47. When I was a kid, I remember when governments were talking about millions of dollars. And then I remember when it switched to billions of dollars being, sizable packages. And then during the financial crisis, that was the first time we considered trillions of dollars. And you know what? We're going to be at quadrillions pretty soon because that's how quickly our currency is debasing. That's fully intentional. That's fully the effect of money printing, right? And so there's more of that to come. There's more of this just obnoxious paint yourself in the corner, Fed trying to get itself out of a problem by adding to a problem. That's just not how you fix a problem. You don't fix this just massive debt sinkhole that you're in by printing more money. You only make it worse until people completely lose confidence in your currency and the currency starts to collapse. It's not going to happen in the US anytime soon. But as I believe I learned this from you, this analogy too, Greg, the US dollar is the best looking crack house on the crack street. There are many government fiat currencies that are going to go down this decade, maybe even this year. Look at what the Japanese yen is doing. It is just getting hammered right now. And we're not far behind that same kind of trajectory. The Canadian dollar, I love Canada, but man, that's going to go down well before the United States dollar as well. This is ugly, guys. This is an ugly decade, and we are going to have a tumultuous decade. So you got to kind of pay attention and know what you're doing. Yeah. Hey, Greg, I have something I want to talk to you about too, if that's okay with Q and Chris, but the correlation with Bitcoin and the Nasdaq, right? It's about 90%, 90+%. When people get fearful, they hit the sell button, right? And everything, the correlation of basically everything goes to one, especially risk on assets. We both know, all of us here know that Bitcoin is the world's ultimate safe haven asset. It should be where people flock to when they're scared, right? But instead, the majority of market participants still consider Bitcoin to be kind of like a small tech stock. They think of it like a Shopify that was up at, a price to sales ratio of 20 or 25 or 30. And so they sell that quickly when they get concerned. How does Bitcoin break that correlation? I know that it's a matter of education. I know that it's probably going to take years. I'm getting antsy though, right? I want to see it happen right now. I want Bitcoin to completely decouple from the markets, and for the equities, I don't care if they fall and get burned. They should crash and burn for a while. I want to see Bitcoin to be the sole survivor to take over that role from the US dollar. When do you see as a time frame for where we could actually see a true decoupling?
Yeah, great question. So I don't know where Bitcoin is right now. I actually, word of honor, I haven't checked the price of Bitcoin today, but I have followed BITO on the equity markets, and that's a cash settled Bitcoin ETF, as you know, futures ETF.
Futures.
Yeah, the cash settled futures Bitcoin ETF, and I can see the correlation between the algos trading volatility, which translates to the equity markets. Increasing vol typically means equity markets are going down, and how these algos are trying to gain protection by selling another asset that they believe, and this is algos that are programmed by humans rather. Don't forget, there is some artificial intelligence programming that goes on, but ultimately it's the humans that start them off with that belief. Bitcoin is a risk asset, therefore it should trade in correlation with the other risk assets. The problem is the humans that are programming it are basing it on a rear view mirror of a limited time frame. The problem also is that cash settled futures and the creation redemption feature in the ETF allow the computers to trade this on a daily basis and not carry their futures position through to the end of the day. So, but I like seeing it, and I like to pretend I understand what's going on in the markets. And there are times when I think Bitcoin has held up very well in the context of selling of other risk assets. But when does it happen full on? I can only tell you that my time frame for holding Bitcoin is for my entire life, and I think it'll happen within my entire life. Now, that won't be enough for a lot of people out there, but you got to be careful what you wish for, because ultimately you actually want the price of Bitcoin to be held down because you want to buy more of it, okay? And it's not just me. It's people in the world that really need Bitcoin. So it's the less privileged third world countries. So in that respect, I'm not upset about it. I joke, smile. These computers are allowing you to, or algo trading algorithms are allowing you to stack more cheap Bitcoin. But when does it change? All I can tell you is being on stage with Orlando Bravo was an eye-opening experience for me in Miami, because he is a $100 billion private equity fund that has clients that are the biggest asset allocators in the world, sovereign wealth funds from all around the world. And he says they are dying to get in. So that, coupled with Fidelity investment research that shows that there's Bitcoin and then there's shit coins, and Bitcoin is the only digital asset that solves the fiat Ponzi. I think over time, Jeff, it happens. But here's my experience of being a hedge fund manager. And we used a little bit of leverage, but we were also hostage to redemptions from our clients. And by the way, clients are always selling when they should be buying, and they're always buying when they should be selling. Okay. So they get you to back yourself. It's called the weight of money. It's as your fund gets bigger, you have to add to the same things you've been adding to, which is the Cathie Wood's experience right now. Like, she pushed some of these crazy stocks to unsustainable price to sales multiples, just because people were throwing money at her. Okay, at a hedge fund, let's say you use leverage, and your margin clerk comes to you, and it's 2 p.m. on a trading day, and he says, Foss, we're getting a rush of redemptions. You need to raise 20 million bucks by the end of the day. And you're like, fuck, the only thing there's a bid for is my shorts, okay? Because everybody's short all the same shit. So the only thing that has a bid is the same stuff you're already short, okay? Because you typically short things like the index, because it's easy to short the index. And then you hold individual stocks against the index, and that delta is widening. So then you have to unwind a little bit at uncomfortable levels. The point is, a tap on the shoulder from your margin clerk is not a happy experience. And then you don't sell what you want to, you sell what you can. And sometimes what you sell is your most valuable stuff, which is Bitcoin sometimes. Now, there's not enough Bitcoin in the markets to truly blame that on the selling from the hedge funds. $1 trillion asset in the context of a $900 trillion global US financial assets in total, Bitcoin shouldn't be getting the shit kicked out of it, but it does, because on the one hand, you have the algos, okay? On the other hand, trading the cash settled futures ETF. On the other hand, you have hedge funds that have positions in Bitcoin mining stocks and might be actually short Bitcoin against them, and playing the alpha rather, between the performance of Bitcoin and the performance of the mining stocks. Now, look what the performance of the mining stocks versus Bitcoin has been over the last 3 months. Horrible, right? Bitcoin miners have publicly traded Bitcoin miners have grossly underperformed the performance of Bitcoin. Well, do you think there's some new hedge funds that come out and say, now I'm going to buy Bitcoin miners and I'm going to short Bitcoin itself? All I'm trying to say is, you can get hedged and wedged in so many different ways. And when you get that tap on the shoulder from the margin clerk, you're like, oh, for God's sakes, the last thing I needed is to get redeemed when my positions are already working against me. Okay. And that's what causes illiquidity unwinds, or basically, the risk off mentality. You don't sell what you want to, you sell what you can, because guess what? Your client needs 20 million bucks. And if you don't have 20 million bucks, you need to gate your fund. And when you gate your fund, people say, I thought you said your fund was liquid and you gated it. Now I can't get my money back. So you don't have a business anymore because you just gated your hedge fund. Okay. And it is just a big circular, I'm not going to use the word, but I guess I have to. It's circle jerk, right? It's fucking everyone's sitting around the table trying to outsmart everybody else in terms of this big circle jerk. And that's what happens in the trading markets on a daily basis. But you stretch that out over the longer term, Jeff, Fidelity believes that it's insurance. I believe it's credit insurance on a basket of fiat currencies. When you own insurance, you own a long volatility asset. When you're short credit, you are long volatility, which means as vol increases over time, that should make Bitcoin more valuable, not less valuable. But in the interim, all these other dynamics are coming into play. So to summarize, I will give a target, but not a time, or I will give you a time, but not a target. Okay, I'm going to give you a time, but not a target. By the end of 2022, it will be better. Is that fair? It will be better. I'm not saying it'll totally unwind, but it will be better. That's my, and then if you say how long until it unwinds, you know, until there really is a negative correlation between you know, the Nasdaq and your insurance. I'm, you know, within my kid's lifetime. I know it's going to be way shorter than that, but look, don't back me into a corner, people. Yeah. I know you're not trying to, Jeff. Try and extend your time horizon. You got to chill out. You got to be happy that you can purchase insurance at extremely cheap levels, as you've already pointed out. And then my tagline, don't overthink this, people. It's a rounding error in the context of the bigger picture. Don't get too fancy. DCA, dollar cost average when the price is going up, dollar cost average when the price is going down. I'll talk to you guys in 20 years.
Love it. Hey, we should bring it back. Q, we've gone on an hour-long tangent now. Do you have a question for us or anything?
I mean, I do, but at the same time, I joked with Chris. I was like, do I need to ask a question? I love the fact that you stole my favorite question, and I'm grateful for it. And Foss, you brought up something that I kind of want you guys to really dive deeper into, but all of these indices, S&P, Russell 2000, Nasdaq, anything else, Dow included, have the same number go up technology rooted in the algorithm designed to build up these indices. The 30 stocks that Dow started with are not the 30 stocks that are in there today. The stocks that the Nasdaq started with are not the stocks that the Nasdaq started with today. So I'm kind of curious about this idea that the number go up technology exists in the stock market, and then you have it with Bitcoin as well. It feels to me like that feeds into the correlation. So I kind of want to present the question back to you, Jeff, of what are you looking for as far as decoupling, and where or when are your expectations being set for that?
Yeah, sure. So that's a great question. And that's this question I get asked all the time too. That's why I tried to get Foss to answer it so he could give me some tips. But you know, I actually think it comes down to education. I really do. I think that they're correlated because people still don't understand what Bitcoin is. They think of it, and these are huge institutional investors that manage billions of dollars. They think of Bitcoin and they sort of lump it together with crypto, which shows that they don't understand it because they think of it as all the same. And they lump all that together with basically venture capital / small tech stocks. And so whenever they see that clump of things and they're holding on to that and they see market conditions deteriorate, that's what they sell first. And so that's why we see the sell down in innovation stocks and growth stocks and tech stocks and small cap stocks and Bitcoin, although Bitcoin has held up, but it's still tightly correlated. So I think it comes down to education. What is the answer? The answer is more education, right? We need to continue to teach people what Bitcoin is. We need to teach people that it's just simply better money. It's not a tech stock. It's not a little VC company like basically all of crypto, all of altcoins are. I just think that's venture capital, that's mark to market, 24/7, 365. People love to play it. It's basically like a casino. They have no moats, right? No protective moats. Anybody can get in. All you need is a white paper and a salesman. It reminds me of what I think Mark Twain used to call a gold mine, right? A liar standing next to a hole. I think of that for most of altcoins. It's a liar or a marketer standing next to a white paper. They have basically no substance, but hey, if you tell me you're the new altcoin that's going to be better than Bitcoin, quote unquote, I'll throw $1 billion at you. I'll throw $1 million at you. You know, I'll promote that on Twitter and jack up the price and then rug pull you and walk away with a bunch of money. So I hate seeing that, but I think because people are like that, right? There's always going to be speculators. There's going to be people who like to trade things and collect stupid things. I think the altcoin market might stick around for a while because of that, because it's hard to change human nature. I personally don't care. I think, to me, that's just a complete distraction to what's going on with Bitcoin. The whole Bitcoin is better money. It's a movement that's literally going to change the world. It's a parallel financial system that we can jump off of the current fiat garbage, jump onto this arc over here, and start a much better life. And I think start the age of legends for our kids and grandkids and their kids. We're just going to have a much better world based on this system. So I'm totally like digressing from your question, but that's what I think. I think it all comes down to education. I think the reason all of us are here today and we go on Twitter Spaces and on FinTwit and wherever we go to talk to people, and why we had 25,000 people at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, which was fantastic, by the way. Nice job, guys. The reason why we're all here and giving up our time to do this, it's about education. It's about teaching people about a better way, about a better money, and you can get off of that circus and escape from that circus and get onto the Bitcoin standard, and it will change your life for the better. So that's what I'm here for, and I think that's why we're all here, is we're trying to educate the masses.
So yeah, great point. Can I add that 25,000 Americans is equivalent to 30,000 Canadians once you incorporate the exchange rate. Okay, so I think there was closer to 30,000 people there, and that's Canadian math. Okay, but here's the other thing. Yeah, education is so key, and here's the shameless plug for my the platform I'm involved in. And Bitcoin Magazine has been very helpful in that too. It's called LookingGlassEducation.com. It is a free education platform for people around the world that aren't being taught what they need to learn, because the traditional education system has no interest in educating students that the commercial banks where their parents hold their deposits are regularly insolvent when we have these economic crashes. Okay, I remind you that I started working for Canada's largest bank, the Royal Bank of Canada, in 1988. Directly for the CFO, I was working for him, and the Latin American debt crisis had caused an issue such that the Royal Bank of Canada was actually insolvent. And I went to him and I'm like, Emil, and he's a great guy. Okay, he's sort of like Charlie Munger though, like, you know, he was old, and I go, Emil, we have a problem. And he goes, I know, don't tell anybody. Like, what the fuck? Don't tell people that have their deposits in the Royal Bank of Canada that the largest financial institution in Canada is actually on its way to bankruptcy. And, you know, they weren't the only one. Exactly the same thing. It was with all the money center banks in New York City. That's why Treasury Secretary Nicholas Brady had to solve the Latin American debt crisis using his Brady plan. That's where I got my start, people. 1988, my first project was trading Latin American debt. I often say, in my history, Argentina, which defaulted back in 1986, has defaulted 4 times since then. There's never been a 30-year bond from Argentina that's actually matured. That's sort of funny, and it's sort of not, okay? Because Argentina is a G20 country, for God's sakes. And we can, you know, just say, oh, well, whatever. It's a G20 and these people, it's endemic. It's not endemic. It is a problem with a strengthening US dollar. When people run to safety, they tend to run to the best crack house on the crack street, okay? So they all run to the same crack house. The problem is that crack house causes all the other crack houses to have to close down and restructure. A strengthening US dollar is 100% correlated to emerging market blowups. And the US dollar has strengthened so precipitously lately. You think that the emerging markets are not under extreme duress right now, and that the trade deficit with the US is actually going to get worse? Well, I'm expecting, and Jeff, you said we may be in recession. Well, technically, I'm changing the definition of recession to 1 quarter of contraction. So fuck you guys. You take this arbitrary definition of recession as being two quarters. Okay, how about we call it like it is? The economy shrank last quarter. It shrank. I need to say that again. It shrank, okay? And yet the global fiat debt Ponzi did nothing but explode bigger, which means your tax base got worse because the economy shrank, and your debt burden got bigger because of the interest coupon on the debt. Pure mathematics. All fiats are debasing. It's just a race to the bottom. The US will be one of the last currencies to fail. but ultimately all fiat currencies fail. Canada will fail before the United States. That doesn't make me happy. If Canada adopts the Bitcoin standard before the US does, it would make me so happy because it would be Canada's insurance policy. I don't want the USA to fail. I love the country. I've been to school there. You guys know that story. I love the USA as a bastion of freedom. We need to develop a parallel network. It is called Bitcoin, okay? Why, though, do we have people that talk down Bitcoin? The Gary Blacks of the world, an equity clown that came out of Goldman Sachs without understanding credit, who talks down Bitcoin as a long duration tech stock, essentially. Do you think Gary might be short Bitcoin? Do you think Gary might be the guy that's trying to hedge his foolish equity positions with Bitcoin and trying to tell the algos in New York City, hey man, you got to trade this against Bitcoin, because, it's a long duration tech stock. So they program their computers to help Gary Black's thesis come to fruition. The problem is he spent 0 time studying credit, okay? Credit makes the world go round. Credit is why inflation is necessary in a capitalist system, because credit leveraging means the collateral that you've lent money against. As long as there's inflation, the value of that collateral increases and you can leverage that capital. As you know, a bank holds less than $6 of equity absorbing risk capital against a $100 loan. The other $94 comes from depositors' money. So when the CFO of one of Canada's largest institution and one of the top 20 banks in the world says, don't tell anybody, that better open your friggin' eyes. And it did to me in 1988. And I finally found Bitcoin for being what it is. An insurance contract on the fiat Ponzi that starts with banking. It extends to CFOs that don't want you to tell anybody, and it extends to risk managers in Omaha, Nebraska that own all the bank stocks and therefore don't want you to buy your insurance, so they call it evil, okay? Man, oh man, this is just getting even worse by the day as these conflicted old fucks try and talk people into their position. Don't listen to these people. Study the reality of the world. Again, lookingglasseducation.com, proud to be part of that platform. It's already being translated into Spanish, guys.
Nice.
And I'm so proud of that. And by the way, it's also donated $40,000 US to the El Salvador school system to try and help the kids in El Salvador understand what education and Bitcoin can do to change their futures. And quite honestly, right now, I really want third world and lesser privileged people to join the benefits of Bitcoin, and the price being suppressed by the likes of Gary Black and Charlie Munger, who are giving conflicted information, either because they're intellectually lazy or giving conflicted information because they want they're intellectually lazy or they are conflicted. Either way, it's not a bad thing. It's a rounding error. The title, and by the way, we haven't even addressed this. Did either one of us call for Bitcoin to go to 30,000? Which I don't think is outrageous, but I don't think I'm calling for it to go to 30,000. Certainly it could go there, but I don't care because I'm not smart enough to tell you whether it's worth 30,000, 40,000, 60,000. I do believe that it's so cheap right now based on both the value of Bitcoin as default insurance using credit default swaps. I wrote that paper for Bitcoin Magazine, or my price target of $2 million US per Bitcoin in today's dollars. Both of them make Bitcoin look stupid cheap. And you're not supposed to determine or try and figure out why the market is keeping it stupid cheap. You're supposed to laugh to yourself and giggle and say, thank you, Mr. Market, because I need to accumulate a full position of Bitcoin. And that full position doesn't mean 100% exposure to me. I don't think it means 100% exposure to Jeff either. But some Bitcoin maxis are 100% in. And if that's how you want to manage your risk, go for it. I am personally around 40%. And all I know is 40%, if Bitcoin goes to the price I think it is going to go to, my kids are going to be fine. And that's all I really care about. I'm doing this on a 20-year time horizon. I'm not trying to figure out the daily machinations. All I know is Fed is currently walking Bitcoin much more towards my price target because the probability of them having to go to QE infinity increases daily as the markets react as they are acting.
Totally agree. Q, do you have anything I can jump in here too, but if you have more questions, let's go for it.
I have one question for the both of you, but I'll save it to the end. Like, ignore me. I'm just here to look pretty. I'm here to
Okay.
listen.
Yeah, you keep looking pretty. So I'll just jump onto what Foss just said then too. Like, you guys, we talk about Bitcoin price action all the time. People ask me about that kind of thing. I just want you to quit focusing on that. And this is for people in the audience. Like, short-term price action just simply doesn't matter. Bitcoin is savings technology. It's literally the world's greatest savings technology that's ever been invented. It is for savings. Like, you don't trade your checking account. You don't trade your savings account. You just try to add to it and increase it as possible. So the only reason I ever talk about things like price action is because if it were to dip, that's when I talk about, I want to back up the truck and buy even more. Because when you know, like, we're here in 2022 and we know that by 2030, 2035, it's going to be somewhere up here, these little tiny moves just simply don't matter. What you need to be doing is you need to be figuring out a plan for accumulating for yourself and for your family. The best way to do it, the easiest way to do it, as Greg mentioned, is the dollar cost average. Just set it and forget it, right? Pick some amount that you can afford and put whatever that is into Bitcoin every day or every week or every month. There's tons of ways you can do that. You can do it easily on Swan. You can do it easily on Strike. And there's tons of other ways to do that. So just figure out what Bitcoin is. Think of it as insurance for this collapsing system. Don't just think about it like it's some investment that's going to go to the moon. I get that. That's how I came into this space way back in 2016, was I looked at the Sharpe ratio and I saw that, yes, it's volatile, but it tends to be more volatile to the upside, so you can improve your investment returns. But people in developing nations that have currencies that are constantly debasing, they're hyperinflating, they're losing their purchasing power day after day and year after year, they fundamentally understand what Bitcoin is. They understand what it means to have an absolutely scarce asset that you just cannot jump in there with a bunch of cronies and say, hey, we're going to print 10x the amount that we have currently. We're going to debase our nation at the benefit of us, the government cronies at the top. You can't do that with Bitcoin. That's what makes it so beautiful. That's what makes it social justice for the world. It makes it fair for the world. What's cool about Bitcoin is it's literally going to force an honest unit of accounting onto the world's governments, whether they want to or not. It's going to force an honest unit of accounting onto huge investment banks and onto Wall Street. They hate that. They know that it's coming. The ones who are smart enough, like the Jamie Dimons, who have studied it a little bit and who came out just vehemently opposed to it, they're opposed to it because they know that it shines a light into their dark corner. They can't do these things that they do anymore to get ahead of everybody else, to make their millions and billions of dollars. They have to actually do work. They have to do a proof of work. They have to show their work in order to earn Bitcoin. And that's what's fair for the world, right? If you're willing to put time and effort in and sweat a little bit, you can start stacking sats yourself. Even if it's just a minimal amount of sats right now, you're making a better future for yourself and for your family and for future generations just by doing that. Because Bitcoin preserves and appreciates your store of value over time and across the world. And so that's just what makes it just a far superior money. I love it. I can't stop talking about it. I'll stop there.
Yeah, and so to add to that, you mentioned the volatility. Yeah, volatility works in both directions, right? You can have a volatile asset as it goes up in price. Like, here's the funny thing. I hope you guys understand this statistic, but on my screen, what is the volatility of a straight line, assuming this is a price and time chart, of a straight line that goes from the top left to the bottom right? What is the volatility of that? It's zero. Right? It's absolutely got no volatility. But are you happy owning that asset? Fuck no. It's gone from this price down to this price, but according to mathematics, using volatility as your risk metric, it's not risky. Okay. Vol is defined as standard deviation of returns, and it's been accepted as a risk measure on Wall Street. It's value at risk. It's all these risk measures that the Wall Street banks use to calculate the the pools of risk that the bank is having. Some of them make sense, some of them don't. Again, I'll point out the volatility of something going from the top left to the lower right in a straight line has zero vol, and the P&L on that position, you don't want to be the trader that owns that in a long position. You'd like to be short it, but you wouldn't want to be long it. At the end of the day though, vol is an accepted measure. So Bill Miller, very smart asset manager, comes out, who supports Bitcoin. I think he has 50% of his net worth in Bitcoin. He goes, volatility is the price of return. Okay, so that's another way of looking at it. Okay, something that is sawtooth like this, but is going from the lower left to the top right, is volatile and therefore risky. But look, the line is like this. That's what you got to look at. And then you turn it into log scales. Like, that's a smart way of looking at things as well. And people should get comfort. The wrong answer is owning zero Bitcoin. The really wrong answer is being short Bitcoin, but God, I don't need to go into that anymore. Effectively, if you own zero Bitcoin, you are very irresponsibly short the most important risk or insurance contract you'll ever see in your life. I believe it's the best asymmetric return opportunity I've ever seen. And why can I say that? I'm 58 fucking years old. I'm not a 24-year-old kid that has just stumbled upon this thing, okay? I've lived in the trenches for 30 plus years. So I can say it, and all due respect to the younger kids that are 20 years old and knocking it out of the park with their analysis, dude, you got to sweat it. You got to sit in a risk chair where your sphincter is so fucking tight, you've never in your life felt the pressure of managing money until you see the opportunity that this presents, okay? So you got to get a tight sphincter at least 3 times in your life over managing money until you can come out and say it's the best asymmetric return opportunity you've ever seen. So with all due respect, if you're 20 years old, you have not done that, doesn't mean you're not super smart and adding value to our ecosystem. I'll just finish my little pitch on this basis. Listen to guys like Bill Miller, listen to guys like Orlando Bravo, listen to guys like Marcelo Clore. These are people who are equally as successful as Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, but have also done the work and have come at it from a different angle. Okay, you can reduce your portfolio risk overall by putting Bitcoin into your portfolio, especially when bonds are providing no balancing against equity market drawdowns. This is the first time in history that the Nasdaq has been down double digits and the long bond has also been down double digits in 1 quarter. There is no risk absorber in a market where interest rates are under pressure to increase and there's no room to bring them down again. Okay, it's been an ugly, ugly quarter for the 60-40 portfolio, 60% debt for, 60% equities, 40% bonds. There's also a rule of thumb that whatever your age is, that's how much bonds you should own in your portfolio. So someone who's 80 years old is supposed to have 80% of their portfolio in bonds. Guess what? Bonds are getting crushed. They're down 10%. Your portfolio just got rinsed, okay? You're getting rinsed and you're in these safe assets. No. Look outside the box of the last 40 years. Look to Bitcoin, understand the diversification benefits of Bitcoin, not diversification, diversification. Diversifying is selling one tech stock and buying another tech stock, okay? They're all getting hit by the same risk off beta, market beta, and everything like that. Models break down because people want their money back, okay? So Jeff, wise advice. You know, we have a lot of pretty smart people in the Bitcoin community. What you need to do is lower your time preference, extend your understanding that you are reducing risk by putting Bitcoin in your portfolio. And I use this line at the Bitcoin conference. I got to say it again. When I orange pill someone and they decide to get up to the 5% allocation in their portfolio, it's like they forgot what the other 95% of their portfolio is. And they're focused just on this 5% little nugget. Focus on the donut. Don't focus on the whole, okay? Understand that Bitcoin is a donut that people can always poke a hole in. Oh, it's too volatile. Oh, the blockchain could break. Oh, you know, governments can ban it. You know what? Zero probability events, they are not, but they're low probability, so that you should focus on the donut, not focus on the hole. The hole is the tail risk, okay? Now, what you need to understand is it's a probability distribution. Any risk investment is a probability distribution, and you tend to play probabilities. That's the way you survive in the risk markets. My tagline, all I bring to the table is 35 years of mistakes, right? Like, I've been doing this for 35 years. Trust me, I've made my share of mistakes, but you learn to protect your winners and shed your losers. That's the only way you can survive. So play probability distributions. I need to end on this, or, you know, we're getting close. I know Q has a question. My final dissertation, my price target for Bitcoin is $2 million US per Bitcoin in today's dollars. And the market is trading somewhere around 40,000 in today's dollars. 40,000 divided by 2 million is 1 in 50, which means the market is giving me a 2% chance I'm right. And I'm not 100% certain I'm right, but man, oh man, am I more than 2% certain I'm right. So it's like going to the racetrack. I think I might have said this with you as well, Q. The racetrack is giving you crazy good odds in your favor, crazy stupid odds in their favor. You're supposed to buy those odds. And while you're not 100% certain, there is one thing I am 100% certain of. Fiat money will continue to debase on an accelerated basis, because that's pure mathematics, especially when your global GDP is shrinking and your numerator, which is global debt, is increasing, because you have politicians who don't understand math. And, you know, in confession, Justin Trudeau in Canada came out and said he's never been very good at math. Okay, we should actually have a restriction for politicians who are not good at math. That will never happen. But it's like saying, oh, it's not his fault. Well, fuck you, it's not his fault. You voted him in an office. If you go to a surgeon who has horrible eyesight and you ask that surgeon to operate on you, you're supposed to get what you, you know, the risk. You don't hire surgeons with shaky hands and poor eyesight. You know, in similar light, you shouldn't hire politicians that say stuff like the budget will balance itself, etc. So over to you, Q. Mathematics runs the world. Math is the base layer of language. Understand what that means. Regardless of what your mother tongue is, everyone understands math. If you speak Chinese, if you speak English, if you speak Spanish, you can't speak to each other, but you all understand the same mathematics, okay? Math is the base layer of language. Bitcoin is the base layer of monetary energy, which is math plus code. It's the most beautiful technology I've ever seen in my life. Go and watch the blockchain in action if you are visually, you know, if you're visually stimulated. I was a Bitcoin skeptic until I actually watched the blockchain in action. And I'm like, are you kidding me? As an engineer, this is beautiful. And no one controls it. And it's truly decentralized. Over to you, Q.
Sorry, I just wanted to remind everyone that yes, I can see past my giant ass nose. So thanks for pointing that out, Jim Johnson. I do want to, like, honestly, there's nothing more I could really add to this conversation other than to be the contrarian asshole that I am. So I don't agree with the notion of inflation. I don't think it's transitory, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. My thesis on this is we have not yet felt the effects of high energy in our goods and services. We've seen high energy costs, but that hasn't translated and trickled into everything else. So I actually think we are going to be seeing a genuinely reported inflation number as far as consumer price index goes in double digits. I know both of you have kind of said your expectations are not that. Where or what are you drawing on to make yourselves, or to conclude, to draw that conclusion?
I'll jump in here quick. So the two biggest factors in how the government comes up with the actual CPI number are housing and transportation. And so what does that mean? So housing, basically what's happening? Are people buying houses? Are they not? What are housing prices doing? What are rents doing? Those kind of things. Are people applying for new mortgage applications, or are they not? Transportation, what are the new car prices doing? What are used car prices doing? What is the price of oil doing and gasoline? all of those things. So if you look across the board at basically all of those factors I just mentioned, almost all of them have peaked and are significantly down. If you look at what the banks are talking about, new mortgage applications, JP Morgan reported this a couple of weeks ago, way down. Refinances are way down. New housing applications are way down. Housing prices are a lagging indicator, but they will come down. When mortgage rates go up, for every 1% that the 30-year fixed rate mortgage goes up, the affordability of the house you can buy drops by 10%. So here in the US, we've basically gone from 3 to 5% for the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. That means people, even just from 6 months ago, can now officially afford to buy 20% less of a house. So if they were looking at a $500,000 house at a 3% fixed rate mortgage, now that it's at a 5% fixed rate mortgage, they can only afford a $400,000 house based on their monthly payments. That has a significant impact. So that will for sure cool off the housing market. The Fed knows that. They've actually hinted at that, and they are actually trying to do that to slow down the economy, to slow down, to rein in inflation. Oil, as we all know, peaked up around $130 per barrel. Now it's down to about what, 105, 102, somewhere in that range right now. That has come down substantially, about 25%. The world runs on oil and gasoline prices. When they get too high, that causes demand destruction, because people who drive trucks, who do, use transportation, they have to make the decision: do we keep doing what we're doing and actually lose money because of the input costs, or do we just kind of stop doing this for now and wait for prices to cool off? So as they say in the commodity world, high prices fix high prices, right? That's the solution for high prices, is you just need high prices, and that kind of shuts down demand. Prices drop because of that. Those are the things that I look at. Food costs, which most people bring up to me as the reason why they think that inflation is going to continue to rise. That's a distant third when it comes into the CPI calculation. And so, yes, I agree that food prices are still high, and some of them are even rising. Although some of those are debatable, because some of those base prices are actually down recently. Even if that is higher, it has to outweigh the dropping transportation sector costs and the dropping housing sector costs. So that's my answer. That's why I think that even if we do have a relatively high April CPI when it comes in, it will be at or near the peak. And then from there, and by the way, I'm not saying we get deflation. It's super important for people to get this. I'm not saying we're going to have deflation. We're going to have disinflation. So if we were going 85 miles per hour down the highway in our car, all we're doing is taking our foot off the gas pedal a little bit, and we're going to be going like 75 miles per hour. We're still cruising. We're going really fast. Inflation is still really high, but it's a little less than it was. So that's what I'm saying. Greg, you probably have different thoughts. Go.
I don't actually, and I couldn't say it any better. So I'm not going to expand it on that basis. I need you to understand that, Q, that, there's certain measurements, and then there's the all important X food and energy number. Look, if you don't need food and you don't need energy, you're in good shape, right? Fuck off. Okay. Like whoever came up with this basket X food and energy, but that's the way they try and jawbone stuff as well, or change the mathematics. So here's what I want to point out at this point in time. It looks like vol is trying to contain itself going into the close here. That's a good sign for equity, for markets, because you don't want vol spiking to 80% annualized. The Fed, it's all about what happens on Tuesday afternoon, not just what happens, but how the markets respond to it. Okay. So it's, turnaround Tuesdays tomorrow. I wouldn't, do a whole lot of thinking about it. It's all about Wednesday. And then it's about the forward guidance, about the dot plots, if they even do that stuff anymore, and whatever. But Wednesday afternoon is going to be an incredibly important time in the markets. So the Fed has a dual mandate, right? This is the crazy thing. I mean, and those two mandates are almost a direct opposite. They need to control inflation and have full employment. Well, right now they're not controlling inflation. And if we head into a recession, typically jobs don't do well in a recession. So, they're going to be failing on both mandates. I don't know what got into Jerome Powell's head, why he would ever accept a second term in that chair. The poor guy, he could have exited gracefully, but perhaps no one else was smart, he was the only one foolish enough to accept the second term. Anyone with a brain said, why would I want to sit in that chair? Like it's an impossible, you lose on both ways. You're not going to satisfy inflation and you're not going to have full employment. The two, at best, you're going to come out 1 for 2, and you're probably going to go 0 for 2. Okay. How's that going to be as a legacy? I went over. I'm an over. Well, I don't know, but all I can say is I really hope that people continue studying Bitcoin. They will benefit from conferences like the Bitcoin conference. And here's my final pitch about what a great community the Bitcoin community is. This was brought up by Jeff Booth and Preston Pish with me, and I learned this, but I guess I didn't need to learn it, but it was pointed out by those two guys on a conference, on a call with John Vallis. And we talked about what we learned at the conference. And one of the things that was very apparent to me was price was rarely discussed at the conference. We were talking about a vision for the future. And the people that are there generally are givers. I've said this before, Bitcoiners are people with big hearts. They care about the future. They are not conflicted like some of the other people I brought up in this call already. They have the best interests of their children in mind. They are trying to develop a platform that will succeed, that you can onboard the failures that will exist in the Ethereum, Bitcoin, the Ethereum blockchain ecosystem that Jeff has mentioned. I actually subscribe to the notion that Ethereum is a test net for the Bitcoin layer 3. Anything that succeeds on Ethereum will gravitate towards the most secure decentralized blockchain there is. Yada, yada, yada. I don't want hate mail from Ethereum or meth heads. You guys are already fucking stoned. It's fine. Do whatever you want to do. I want Bitcoin to succeed because it solves the fiat Ponzi. No other digital asset does that. A price was not even discussed. What we are discussing is the platform that's going to allow for the orderly transformation from the fiat standard. Fiat can still exist as your checking account. Bitcoin is your savings account. It's your store of monetary energy. We want this to succeed. We do not want the USA to lose its position as the bastion of freedom in the world. I think Bitcoin is freedom. I think it is the best opportunity we have to solve some of the silliness that we are seeing going on within the central banking systems, including the mandates that are set up. The dual mandate from the Fed, whoever set that up, probably didn't think too far over their skis because they are almost diametrically opposed to each other in the context of an inflationary environment that we have right now. So I guess it leaves us 3 minutes. I don't know how you saw these comments coming in at Q, but if there's any Foss haters out there in the comment section, I can't read them. And if you are a Foss hater, I'm good with that, okay? Just understand, I'm trying to tell the truth. And I'm trying to tell the truth from the position of somebody who has sat in a risk chair for longer than most of you have been alive, okay? And I'm not happy to be 58 years old, but I've seen some shit that there's no way you've seen it. And even more importantly, there's no way you even understand what it means when models break down. When you need to sell something because you're being redeemed, because your unit holders are demanding their cash back, you can't get fancy. You need to hit whatever bid is in the market. And in the case of the great financial crisis, there were times, I'm not kidding, that high yield bonds were dropping by 20 points on a trade. So they were trading at 82. That's where you have them marked in your book. You need to hit a 60 bid to liquidate. And by the way, you don't sell everything that you have. You probably get off a couple of $1 million at 62. And then the next bid is 42. That's what happens in a liquidity unwind. And it's a horrible situation. And you feel sick to your stomach. And I already mentioned the sphincter valve, okay? Your sphincter valve is so tight, you can't even go home and enjoy a drink because the next day is going to be worse than the day you just went through. Good luck to you guys. I love America. I love Bitcoin Magazine. I love the Bitcoin community. And I accept all hate mail. It's fine. I'm just giving you my opinion.
Nothing but love for you, Foss. Nothing but love. Jeff, I'm going to let you have the final word after this very educational conversation. I mean, I genuinely have so much stuff that I need to look up. and I'm going to be studying after this. But Jeff, final word to you.
I love it. I was just really pleased to be on here with Greg. Greg is just a fountain of fantastic information. What I love about Greg is he's all about intellectual honesty. Whether or not it rubs you the wrong way, it's kind of your problem, right? I mean, we're just spewing what we think is the truth. And if you don't like it, that's okay. You know, we're going to keep doing it. So Greg, you keep doing what you're doing. I know you got a few haters out there, but you have most people who love what you do. So keep that up. I mean, you guys just stay on the mission. You know, Bitcoin is here to change the world. It's simply better money. Getting full circle, Buffett, Munger, they don't understand it, and they probably never will. Whether it's disingenuous or they're stupid or they're being actually evil, hard to say. That's that's only they can know that. But understand what we're talking about, you guys. This has changed the world technology. Don't waste your time with other garbage. This is going to be a tough year. This is a great year for stacking sats. Continue to dollar cost average. You'll be really glad you did 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now. So nothing more to add to that. Thanks for having me on today.
Both of you, as always, are welcome. Anytime you guys want to come on the show. Heck, as far as I was concerned, for the last hour and a half, this was the Greg and Jeff show. I had nothing to do with it. So I had an absolute blast listening and viewing this. And I hope everyone else who is at home or is listening to this later on also had just as much fun. Obviously, it's Foss at Foss, Greg Foss, which I just realized today was, I think, you alluding to James Bond. And then
I can say why? I'm so old that I got names suggested to me by Twitter, right? I had no idea what a Twitter handle was. So I joined Twitter and I tried to join as Greg Foss, and they go, that one's taken, but here's another suggestion. At Foss, Greg Foss. And I say, it doesn't matter. I'm never going to get any Twitter followers. So I'll just take that one called at Foss, Greg Foss. So I took it. And then now I can't change it because it does, resonate. It's 4 letters, 4 letters, 4 letters. This is what all the people out there who are getting scammed by the Greg Foss impersonators. I'm mathematically inclined. I like the symmetry of 4, 4, and 4. Okay. It's like the guy I found today. He has the Fibonacci sequence in his Twitter's handle. And I'm like, dude, I'm following you. I don't care. Anyone who puts the Fibonacci sequence as his Twitter, not at handle, but the one that describes whatever you are. He had the Fibonacci sequence there. There are so many smart people in this community. And this is, without, I'm jumping the gun. We are done. Thank you for having me. Q and Chris and the team, you're doing God's work by getting this information and education out there, because that's what the people need to hear. It's truth, okay? And you guys got to understand that guys like Jeff and I have a level of experience that we've just lived through. And hopefully our education is because we want to help you guys succeed. And that's because I have 3 children, and this is why it's so important. So thank you particularly. That Bitcoin conference was off the charts great. And it was great because of the people who were there. And that's what the Bitcoin community is. So buckle down. It could get ugly. Understand that, you don't want it to get ugly, but it gets ugly quickly. Risk happens fast. Okay. That's what you need to understand. Risk happens fast. And be careful what you wish for. I don't want to live in a citadel. I actually want to solve this problem so that there's an orderly transformation for the benefit of my children. I'm, the boomer society, we're pretty selfish, but there are some boomers who actually want to leave the world a better place than when they entered it. That's what Bitcoin helps us do. So yeah, Bitcoin Magazine, David Bailey, his mom, she gave me a hug. Michael Saylor gave me a hug. That doesn't happen to a guy that names himself Foss, Greg Foss, without being so silly that, he was never going to end. And so good things are happening to me, and I thank you guys all for it. Thanks again.
Of course, man. And then, of course, Dr. Jeff Ross at Vailshire Cap. If you're not following these two, you're just doing it wrong. So obviously give them a follow. And you know what? I'm going to make the executive decision now that I've hijacked my show back to say, use promo code FOMO, get 10% off the conference store, and we'll be back tomorrow. That's a wrap. you.